Hello, everyone. All right. So let me know, as usual, guys, if everything is good with the audio, if my mic is clipping, how all this stuff is working and looking. You guys are the producers of this show, as usual. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently, but and I'll talk about that in a second. But as usual, all of this is made possible by headphones.com. And if you want to check out our articles, that's up on headphones.com as well. And we'll be discussing one of those articles a little bit later in this live stream with Listener and Blaine. And we just recently published an article from Listener that is a very comprehensive overview of diffuse field and why it's important. But what we're going to do in this video is, or at the beginning of this live stream, is I want to first do some quick judgments, reviews on products that I know I'm not going to be able to do full video reviews on. I'm not going to do this live like I usually do because I realize it takes up quite a bit of time. And so I figured I did my measurements beforehand, and so I will just struggle through showing them to you guys visually on the screen, and then commenting on them a little bit. So if you'll indulge me for that for the beginning of this, then we will have Listener and Blaine join, and we will discuss all things to do with that article and just good stuff in general. So nice to see everybody here. Yeah, good to see the usual folks. Again, let me know how the audio is. Are we good? I'm not sure if my bitrate is, it's saying my bitrate is not good. Is my bitrate okay, or is it low? I set it to just over 5,000, so that might be a bit low. It's fine? Okay. Okay. Sounds like everything is working. Yeah, I was going to say, I know that I'm not sure if Tam is watching, but I'm just going to hold this up just to infuriate him, because I actually have measured this, and I'm withholding the data from that. So hopefully this goes a certain way to stopping Tam. He sent over this Bluetooth dongle from Creative, the BTW5, and it was so useful that I immediately bought one on the spot. I was like, I need this. And but then the problem is that the one that I bought, it's defective. So I'm back to using Tam's, the one that he sent. Anyways, let's get into doing some quick impression reviews. I don't know what to call this. Quick take reviews, let's say. And once again, I'm not sure if everything is working because YouTube is showing me that this is buffering now, but I assume it's working for you guys. So otherwise, I'm just screaming into the void. First impression series. It's not really first impressions though, because I have actually spent time with these different products. So let's first start with the Tanchjim Origin. Here's the problem. I have so many on my desk that I don't know where I put it. Okay, maybe we won't start with the Tanchjim Origin. Let's start with the Simgot. It's around here somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out if it's over on my table. Oh, I definitely have the Glacier right here, though. So let's start with the Simgot EA500LM. And so this one has been making the rounds, and I know a lot of folks are into it. I'm going to pull up the data here. And I have it here on my desk. So this one, I believe it comes in at around $80. And this was sent over by Linsol. So once again, thanks to Linsol for sending it in. Here it is. As usual, the build quality is pretty good. Simgot does a pretty good job with the build quality of this stuff. So thumbs up there. See if you guys can see it. Now, this one has a number of different nozzles, and I'll go over that here in a second. They don't really change anything except for one of them does make things a bit brighter. And I have labeled them accordingly, so we'll go through that. If I may, pull up the graph here. Okay. EM6L with EA500LM build when. Yeah, the build is really solid. It's like a metal-ish type thing. Well, at least it feels that way. But so here I measured it. I mainly wanted to show you guys here the results with the different nozzles. I might need to adjust this a little bit. Hope you guys can see this. Let me make sure that these are all sort of centered at around 1K. And then this one as well. That's pretty close. So this is with the different nozzles. It does have an impact. I would say my preference is for the gold one somewhat. And when I say nozzles, let me just pop it back to me. I'm talking about stuff like this right here, right? So you can actually take the nozzle off and screw in a different nozzle. So there is a very subtle difference. You remove the slope line? No. So my preference here is, again, for the blue one. Sorry, the blue line, the gold nozzle here. I find that the other two end up being too bright. I mean, actually, okay, so let's just go through it. So for the bass, I think the bass is exceptional. It's boosted. It's sounds punchy, solid, impactful. It's really nice. And then it has some of the usual sort of features that you might find with, like, you know, Harman-ish IEMs. This one is, I don't want to say it's exactly like Harman, because it's not. And I prefer the EM6L, like, just flat out. So the bass is good, the mids are okay, and the treble is just I'm just gonna say it. It's screaming nightmare murder fuel. Not for me for the treble. And again, it's specifically 6K. This is an area where, as some of you know, it's not something I enjoy having an elevation there. This is actually where, for me, I commonly get a length mode peak. But yeah, just not a fan of the treble on this one. The EM6L does a better job. The V-shaped meme said. Yeah, so the EM6L does a better job, and I think it's better balanced overall. So let me just see if I can grab the EM6L here and compare. I'm doing this live. I actually originally started out with, like, having specific images for each of these, but then I just realized there's no way that I'm going to be able to do that. Simgot EM6L. So let me just, right? So to me, and don't worry about this, this is the rocking mode here, but to me, the Simgot EM6L is just a little bit more, it's like not as crazy in the treble for some of the things that I don't like about it. I still EQ it, same, similar region, maybe not quite as much in the treble, but I prefer the EM6L. Both of them I would consider too much glare in the lower treble, but much more so on the EA500LM. So, EM6L good, EA500 less good. And let me just show you once again with the different nozzles. It just makes it worse, basically. But overall, it's not like it's a massive difference. I think it's pretty similar across the board. They do change slightly depending on the seating as well. Like there is some subtle change, but overall, not great. Okay. That is the EA500LM. Let me just... Aha. It's a cool idea. I wish that more... That light went off. I wish that more companies would do actual change with these. Like, you know, if more could be affected with these different things, that would be great. And Simgot has made it so that there's some change in here. This is actually more than I've seen in the past with other companies, but I don't think it changed nearly enough of what it needed to change. So just not great. Oh, sorry. Do you guys want to see the raw plots? I forgot to show you that. This is our manual adjustment method here for now. All right. So again, this is using population average with preference boundaries. Just a trebly boy is how I would describe it. Okay. So that is that one. Let's do the Dunu Glacier next. And the Dunu Glacier, I believe, is $1,400, so it's pretty pricey. And the Glacier comes in this enormous box. Like, I was not expecting it to be this enormous. But Taryn handed it to me, and I was like, holy crap, this is an IEM? But yeah, it's an IEM. The Glacier is one of the craziest build quality IEMs. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. Like, not only does it feel like it's made of ridiculous materials or some sort of ridiculous material, but it also feels it's like the heaviest IEM that I've ever used. Like, it's not uncomfortable, but it is a heavy, thick, chonky boy. It kind of like me, actually. It uses 904L stainless steel, says VSG. All right, so here it is. Right. I was originally worried about like this bit here, right? This is a pretty substantial nubbin that sort of juts out, right? It's pretty intrusive, or seemingly intrusive, and it's also like it's surprising how not uncomfortable this is for me, given how like jagged it is for these various different features on the IEM. But I guess like this is the only bit that actually touches your ear, like this contour here. So it's also MMCX, not 2-pin. So there's that. So someone says, looks like my Let Shure Cadenza 12. Okay, that is a good comparison, because overall, this one is just a worse Cadenza 12. Like, it has the features of the Cadenza 12, but worse. Like exacerbated treble, and it has a contour down, like it's almost got like a Harman contour. So I'll pull that up and we can go through that. So if you have the Cadenza 12, I would just stick with that one. I would not go to the Glacier. It has, again, it's like Cadenza 12, but like V'd. All right, if the tool will load. Dunu. All right, there we go. Nope, that's not a little bit the right thing. Yeah, it does get like fingerprint magnet is an understatement. It's the same thing with other ones that are designed kind of like this. Like the Cadenza 12 is also a fingerprint magnet, but I believe that one's made out of titanium. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to make sure these are aligned roughly. There we go. Maybe we want to align it a little bit further down. something like that. So this is okay. The bass is actually incredible on this. It's extremely punchy, extremely impactful, and dynamic and engaging for the bass. One of the punchiest IEMs that I've come across in a very long time. And it's probably aided by the fact that the bass, boost is not only crazy and boosts all the way up into the sub bass, but it's also very distinct from the rest of it. And then you have some of these features in the treble. So great bass, I would say mids. Again, it's that usual sort of like scooped out lower mid section. And it's not like super lean sounding, but kind of lean, right? And then just sibilant treble. Like this was sibilant to me, to the point where I was sort of wincing. Now, I know there's people talking about this one online a lot, about sort of note weight and having that similar kind of character to the Cadenza 12. And I would agree that actually it does have that. Like when listening to like instrumental music, this IEM actually does work great. It really does give you that sort of sense of that visceral kind of vibe, but the tuning is just way too much in the lower treble for me, and in the upper treble as well. But the upper treble stuff I don't mind quite as much, right? That's that's not that bad, but it's the lower treble stuff where as soon as I put on some vocal tracks on my list of test tracks, it was like that is the lower end of the S's, F's, and T's was coming across too sharp and fatiguing. So no bueno for me on this one. I'm not going to say like categorically this is like not for anybody, but if you're at all sensitive to this treble feature, I would skip this one. And I think like my feedback for Dunu would be like, do this just without this lower treble peak, and then you'll have something really solid, because the rest of it, like, okay, maybe it is a little bit on the lean side for the mids, but like if that's a trade-off for the kind of bass that this thing has, sure, by all means. I think folks would be happy. So that's the Dunu Glacier. Let me just pop back here. Now, there's two more that I wanted to do. If I can bloody well find the origin. I have the FiiO FT5 here, but I wanted to do the origin first. I may have packed it up because I'm taking it into the office to send off to, I don't need to hold it. I can just show you the graphs, to send off to FC Construct, because he's going to review it. So let me just grab the graphs. What? Why? Taryn is sending me things. I don't know why. Is the Dunu Glacier going to have a sequel called the Dunu Vaporeon? I don't know. I don't think I understand this reference. All right. Tanchjim. Tanchjim, maybe. Okay, let's go to the graphs. Tanchjim, it's another one where the build quality is outstanding. And I have packed it up. I see it now in the corner of my eye. But yeah, the build quality is very good on it. And they've gone for something here that I would describe as on the safe end of things, but not like what you get with like what you get with the typical sort of low intelligence tunings, where it's like just slap on Harman IE and off we go to the races. So it has similar kinds of kind of balance for bass to treble, let's say, but the features are not quite in the same spot. So the bass is not as boosted in the sub bass. You actually get quite a bit more mid bass here. And then you do get the scoop, but the scoop is shifted a little bit up, and it's not as extreme. The rest of it is also like pretty balanced, except for there is, again, for me, this comes across quite glary and fatiguing, given, the ye old 6.1 kilohertz resonance length mode for ya boy. But I think, depending on the person, this could be totally palatable. And this is why I think this is one of the more interesting releases, because it's doing similar things to what you might find with like the Simgot EM6L, just slightly different contours, and the contours in slightly different spots is how I describe it. You do get the boosted upper treble as well. But again, these are features that, depending on the person, may shift around a little bit. Lower mids, upper bass, looking thick. Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, no. This is why. Okay, so this is why for this we need the labels, because technically this is mid to upper bass, and then like depending on how you define it, this would be lower mids. But yeah, I mean, I think it makes more sense to have this further down and the other way. But that's why I think this is interesting, right? When I was comparing this before to like some of the other IEMs that are kind of like this, like the EM6L, and this is closer to a slope rather than a shelf. I mean, it's obviously still a shelf, right? But it's closer in that it's not as contoured of a presentation the way you typically find. So it's interesting, I think. A little shouty. Yeah, it is a little shouty. Yeah, I completely agree. For me, it's a little shouty as well. It's not one that I personally would choose, but there are people who like the Moondrop variations, and this, I'm not going to say this would be categorically better than that. I'm just saying this would be if you don't find something like the EM6L shouty or the variations shouty or the Nova shouty, I don't think you're going to find this shouty either. Not really. Maybe a little bit, but let's just say, okay, however you want to normalize it, right? But it's not like it's so far over the line that it's intolerable. It's just with certain tracks, I hear the shout. Yeah, for sure. Now, the other thing is that it does also come with a number of different nozzles. And so they've labeled them S, L, and D. And again, it's one of those where it's like the difference is not really that substantial. There's just there's one that is good, and then the others are just worse, is how I would describe it. Oops, let's just align this here so you guys can see. So the D one is the worst. Well, okay, worst depending on preference, right? Like maybe, dude. Okay, I saw it labeled S, L, and D, and I was like, okay, somewhere, Rudmose is like, where's the reference? and you're saying teal, but teal is referencing a study from Rudmose, I believe, when he's talking about the SLD effect. Anyways, so I go with the S for this one, for the nozzle. They don't make a massive difference. If you're more bothered by the upper treble, maybe you would go with one of the other ones, right? Then there is also there was another one that I wanted to show. Maybe it was this one. They did include another set of tips. That was the other thing I wanted to show. Oh yeah, L, right, treble tip. Okay. Sorry, this is the SLD. So the worst one was clearly D. So S and L are both solid. I wouldn't say amazing, but it's interesting. Then if you wanted to boost the treble for whatever reason, you could use this one. And it's a treble tip. It's kind of like a wider hole for the tip. And that's it kind of just boosts certain regions of the treble. This upper treble stuff is probably just positional variation. But that's the do you guys want raw? You want to see the raw? Something like that. So it's not bad. It's not what I would choose, but somebody might. And so yeah. Look forward to a review from FC Construct on this one. No, wait. Are we going to send it to... we'll send it to either FC Construct or Precog Vision. I'm not sure who. Okay. That is that one. And now let us get into the FiiO FT5, which is this right here. And God damn it. All right. This headphone. Okay. It's the build quality is exceptional. Like for this material, like all of this is just one unit, right? Like, you know how you have the hi-fi man headphones that have the grill where it just sort of pops out if you want it to. This is all one piece. So the grill is part of the cup. And for the mechanical design, it's great. For the, you know, the industrial design, mechanical design, like ergonomics, it works. It's solid. You get 2 sets of pads. These are the suede pads, and you also get the leather ones. The leather ones are awful, but they don't actually measure that differently from one another. But what I noticed, okay, I noticed a couple things. One is that the pad itself for the suede pad, there seems to be a bit of a channel imbalance for the pads. So like, not necessarily the drivers, but when putting the suede pads on, it consistently showed up with a bit of a channel imbalance. The other thing too is that I noticed for whatever reason, like the leather pads, they are more consistent in the response, whereas the suede pads seem to vary quite a bit more depending on positioning, right? So I would do multiple seatings, and with the suede pads, it was like, like I want to say like a delta of like 4 to 5 dB spread, and maybe like 2 dB with those. So that's interesting. Yeah, this is one where, okay, it's just not great. Like, it's not. I'll show you what I mean. I was really hopeful that this would be good. I know, and this is with all apologies to VSG. I love VSG's content. It's great. But this one, when measured on industry standard stuff, at least this unit, it does not measure well. And it's just not good. And I'll explain this. But first, let me just take the pads off and show you guys. The pads are removable with a simple system. Like, I love the simple elegance of this, where there's an elegance in the simplicity of the whole thing, right? That's the driver, and it is a very hi-fi man-esque driver. All right. Okay. I will get to the graphs here momentarily. Blaine's Law. The more someone praises the build quality, the more sound quality is going to get shat on. Yeah. I mean, there are some hi-fi man headphones that, for the sound quality, I would, we've all shat on them, like the closebacks, and the build quality is not great on those either. All right, let me pull up the graphs, and I will show you relative to Harman here as well for the over-ear stuff. FiiO. Okay. And I want to show you guys both raw and calibrated for this. So we'll start with the leather pads. And it's just like, you know how there was some commentary about the FiiO FT5 being sort of like the Modhouse Tungsten. It's not. It's really not. Like, and again, I don't really know where to normalize this because it's got a lot of weird features going on in the mids as well. But yeah, like, this is definitely more like this feature here. By the way, no matter what, like, this happens here. These are averages, and no matter what, I checked it. This wasn't with a seal, like a gap in between the pad and the measurement rig. I did find consistently there to be a little bit of a gap between the pad and the baffle. So that's just something to note. But at the same time, the resonance frequency is actually quite low. It's around here, which might be indicated by this. But yeah, like the big issues, obviously this is an issue, and it's just this sort of thick presentation. And then you have the dip here, which is more than what you have on a lot of hi-fi man headphones in the 1.5K region. Then this, like, it's just treble peaks, unpleasantness, I would say. I don't know, I heard it as being particularly weird timbrally with the leather pads, like really weird, and not in a way where I felt it was really salvageable. Like I'm sure I could EQ this. I did actually EQ this a bit with the suede pads. I thought it sounded better to me with the suede pads, and I did a bit of EQ with that. But there's enough sort of fine-grained issues in the treble that I was like, you know what, like, who is going to do this? And this is going to be different. You know, it's going to shift around on a person-to-person basis. So I expect, at least. Okay, so now let's look at the suede pads, and it's really not that different. It's a little different, but not that different. And this is where I noticed there's a bit of a channel imbalance, and these are averages again, and this would consistently show up differently for, you know, in the treble. So I think this has to do with the pads themselves, not the drivers. For whatever reason, like maybe it's that the suede pads are generally a bit more compliant. They tend to like maybe they're compressing a little bit more on my actual head. They tend to soften some of the peaks in the treble a bit for me, and so it is, and it's less of distance here between this thickness and the this section here, but this is pretty bad still. Let me just do leather against suede here. So it's not, again, it's really not that different. I don't know where we want to normalize this. Somewhat different, but not massive. And then maybe like, right. So, I would just not use the leather ones. I would use the suede ones, and then I would EQ this. But again, it's one of those things where for a lot of tracks you might not notice this, but then occasionally you come across a track where it's like, holy crap, what is going on? Yeah, just not enjoyable. The other thing, okay, I mainly noticed this with the leather pads, but this has, we're going to get into the subjectivities here, but like, this is one of the most dynamically compressed sounding headphones I've ever come across. It's like I could keep turning the volume up and it still didn't sound loud. It's like, what the hell? Like it was painful, but it was still like somehow wimpy. It was a wimpy, piddly kind of sound. And then I put the suede pads on and it wasn't quite as bad. So it just, yeah, not something where I'm going to recommend this over other headphones at similar prices. And the thing is, it's not like this is worse than, say, like a gold planar GL2000, right? Like this is better. Like I'm trying to think of, like, this isn't like, you know, some of those headphones where literally nobody's going to recommend them other than like Zeos. Shots fired, I guess. Like there are people who are going to listen to this and be like, okay, I like that sort of thickness. I like the, you know, the richness or whatever from the lower mids, and it's a planar that's different from some of these other ones. But it's, you know, people like the Meze headphones as well, for example, right? Like the OG Mezes. But this has too much weirdness in the treble as well, and it just sounds like, it doesn't sound blunted for detail. It just sounds like compressed, and it sounds like flat somehow, like flat in a bad way. Like it lacks gumption and joy. So yeah, unfortunately, this is one I do not enjoy or recommend. Oh, good things about it though. the harmonic distortion is low. It's like even at 105 dB, it's below, what was it? I measured this. I don't remember exactly, but it was easily below 2%, maybe even below 1%. So it performs well for that. And so you can't, this is definitely one where you can EQ it, no problem. So the only issue is it's going to involve getting out the scalpel, getting into some of that fine-grained stuff in the treble, high Q stuff. And did I try it with EQ? Yeah, so I do have an EQ profile for this that I've been tinkering with, and it does improve it, significantly. So, definitely, this is borderline EQ required for me, though, is what I'm saying. Okay. There's an anime called IQ. Oh my god. Same issues as Poseidon? No. So the Poseidon is definitely blunted and dull, like dull sounding. Like for whatever reason, like that headphone sounds like you put a blanket over it. This is not like that. This does not have the blunted character. This has like the same problem that, some of the lower end DCA headphones has, like they sound like dynamically compressed somehow. Although, again, two things: low resonance frequency on this one, like around 50 hertz, and then low distortion as well. So it's not like this is. There are things about this that are very good, and then it just sort of fumbles the ball a little bit, right? It does not take it to the end zone quite. I don't know why I would ever make a football reference. I hate football, but you get the idea. Okay, that's going to be it for the backlog series. Let's bring in now the gang. Blaine, do you want to start the call, or a listener? Yep, go ahead, start it. This is going to break everything, just so you guys are aware. Can you guys hear me? I can't hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you now.
Hold on. Let me switch up my microphone really quick.
Ah, you rocking the long hair. Oh, now you're muted again for some reason. What I will say, one of the few things the FT5 has going for it is a modular cable. Yeah, it does. It does. Good accessories. So good build quality, good accessories, great comfort. No issues with that. It's reasonably lightweight, fits the giant audiophile head, but the default sound signature is just like not competitive. That's the issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Hello.
You're a bit quiet. You're
better?
a bit quiet. Yep. Now it's better.
Okay. Gonna rely on the chat obviously to tell us that.
Still a bit quiet. Waiting on Mr.
Hello.
Blaine.
Better?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna turn it up a little bit and scoot closer. Okay.
Yeah, I think you can go even a little bit.
I'm basically maxed out. I should probably just move the mic closer at that point.
Wonder if, yeah.
Yeah, it's an RE20 and I don't have an external preamp.
Okay.
I'm just using the interface preamp, so it's a little insensitive.
Okay. A little insensitive describes my general disposition.
Oh, you.
All right. Let me just.
Where's Blaine?
Yeah, I don't know. Bro is all, what do I do now? There we go.
It has been saying RTC connecting for the past fucking 4 minutes.
Oh, damn. All right.
Excellent. All right. I think Blaine's maybe a little quiet.
I can. Yeah, I can't actually fix that necessarily. Well, maybe I can. I can
Andrew,
be
you can turn
louder.
up the user volume, right?
I can try.
I actually had Blaine at 75%. Perhaps
Okay,
because he was
thanks.
too. Well, I think you were loud last time.
You're
I
loud.
actually had. Thanks. I had Andrew at 75% too, so maybe it was just the
I
app being
always
too
have
loud
myself at
last time.
75%. That's me on a good day.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're cruising at 50% right now.
That's right.
75%, I'll take it.
All right.
Does camera work? Question mark.
That is a good question.
I mean, it's always a risky proposition. I don't know.
I just see infinite loading.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, looks like that's what the stream sees too.
That is
Yes.
also what the stream sees. Yeah,
Well, this is now my form.
All right. I'm okay with it.
I'm with it. Yeah.
Let's. What do you guys want to talk about? There's a bunch of stuff that we could talk about. And the there we go.
There he is. There's my beautiful boy.
Graph guy has joined us.
Oh, God, graph guy.
Yeah. So the big item that I would love. Well, I don't know how much we need to talk about this because we've obviously gone over it and at length, but maybe for the public. So listener has written a very comprehensive article on diffuse field. That is linked in the description. It just got published last night and it's been posted now in various different places this morning. But this is an article that basically I don't know, maybe you can summarize it better than I can, but I would say, for me at least, one of the big takeaways is that this is a good explanation for what people are missing in graphs. You know, when people talk about like, oh, the graph doesn't explain my experience. This is a good explanation as to why that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a big reason why we're doing this whole thing is to kind of triangulate the wider range of possible outcomes for a lot of listeners. That's one of the benefits that diffuse field affords us.
Right.
It was also just potentially, yes. It was. I knew I needed to do an article only after I came to some disagreements online or people asking what we're doing, how we're doing it, or why we're doing it. And I realized that we didn't have all of that information compiled in a single place. So I just figured it would be good for the discourse to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we've done videos that are like related, but not comprehensive.
Yeah, and they touch on them here and there.
Yeah.
They're all like scattered across videos, which, I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot to cover. It's hard to do it all in one video.
So
right?
the other thing too is that like for a lot of this stuff, it's kind of like this stream is kind of like a microcosm for the problem, where it's like you have to kind of do a bit of a bait and switch to get people to actually like you have to like, I don't know, you have to Trojan horse a little bit, you know, the sciencey information, right? Like the nerdy graph.
You know that they can just disconnect, right? Like they don't have to watch this.
I know.
No, we've got them. It's too late.
But they're already here, right?
I mean,
and
probably
it's kind
lost 50 viewers when I showed up.
Well, it's even so. Here's the thing, right? With the live streams, that's one thing because it's like people who are, you know, generally interested in this stuff. I would imagine, but the videos are another thing where it's like I can do a video on, you know, graph stuff, HRTF, whatever, sciencey stuff, and it gets like a fraction of the views that a video on that, you know, a much more catchy video might be. Like, for example, say I were to make a video talking about how IEMs are objectively terrible. That would get a lot more views than if I were to be like, let's talk about, you know, the fact that the pinna is being bypassed and has to be assumed and blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about length modes. So there is a bit of a bait and switch.
You talk a lot about length modes.
Yeah, I'll show you my length mode.
Yeah, I noticed you were talking about the length of your fucking ear canals there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was
well, it's
something that ended up explaining a lot to
Yeah.
him in terms of why his experience deviated from
Well,
a
okay.
lot of other people's.
It's an assumption, but it's a reasonable one because, and I know, like with there was a couple IEMs that I noticed this with, but like the Salnote 02, it gets, and actually to a large extent the Simgot EM6L as well. If you jam them in really far, they stop sounding shrill and horrible. But if you just sort of let them sit at the ear canal entrance, you get that shrillness coming back. So that's why I think it's a reasonable assumption that it's a length mode issue. But also I know from for me, I know that when I do manual cursor based sweeps, it's always almost always at 6.1K where there's a resonance. So
yeah, it's interesting because like even between IEMs, there's definitely variation between where the manufacturers are naturally standardizing the insert depth and where it will naturally sit in a human. But sometimes it does land at the point they're standardizing at. Like the variations, for example, on the 5128, it is at 8K.
Mm-hmm.
We have a recommendation, by the way, about how we can manage this. We'll do nerd content on the top and then Subway Surfer on the bottom. Like a TikTok.
Yeah.
Oh, like have it.
It's not a bad idea. I feel like that's a missed opportunity, actually. I feel like some audiophiles should have made that joke by now in one of their videos.
Yeah, I'm for it.
I mean, isn't that basically what Jamie does, except the nerd content is the spoken bit and the Subway Surfer is the VTuber? Food for thought.
I'm at the point where I don't. There are so many different like tactics that I just sort of lose the plot, and I think at the end of the day, like all I give a shit about is like whether or not people might find it interesting, which is like you can never guarantee that, but like if somebody finds it interesting, right, then at the very least it's worth considering.
Well, this being audio, if we talk about it for long enough, people will start a meme about it, and then there will be conflict over it, and then people will be interested in it. Like that's the long game.
Yeah, exactly. As long as there's a drama outcome, we're golden.
That's how humans work.
Yeah. But back to the article that you wrote there, listener. Is there any, like, I guess if you could sum it up in a couple sentences or less, like what's for the folks who are watching right now who haven't read it, what's sort of the sales pitch there or the elevator pitch?
We've been measuring on one head, evaluating against one target, and I will say that the target has a reasonable basis.
We haven't, but the community
what do you mean?
has.
Oh, so yeah. I mean, yeah, the community at large been using Gross heads with the Harman target. And there's a lot more to a evaluation of the possibilities of a headphone's performance than just doing that. And diffuse field ideally allows us to do this across different heads.
Right. So here is something that as I was sort of editing the piece and kind of going through it, I'm not sure I brought this up to you, but it was sort of running through my mind as a consequence and has continued to ever since I just recently been working on sort of the next piece that I'm working on. And it's that we talk a lot about like HRTF, right? And if you have
we do.
if you have something that reasonably matches your HRTF, there's a good case that it would be received as normal versus if something is meaningfully deviant from your HRTF at your eardrum that it might not be. At the same time, this doesn't account for preference. So who's to say that the general population would prefer wouldn't prefer a deviation from the HRTF and let's say above 3K.
Am I green flashing, by the way?
Occasionally, but I don't mind it. It adds to the mythos.
That's very odd.
Yeah. So you get what I mean, right? Like HRTF is one thing, but we're not where things break down for me is that it's unclear. It's unclear what is the reason for goodness here, whether it be HRTF matching or whether it be preference, because we know from the research, well, we know what we know from the research, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So who's to say that this isn't just preference all the way down and we shouldn't need to bother with HRTF variation?
Well,
go ahead.
Like necessarily. So let's talk about like the residual, how to frame this, the residual variation in the Harman work, right? Like not everyone in the Harman work preferred the exact same things. And that's true of every single study. And obviously, right? Like self-evidently people don't prefer the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that is accounting for that variation has to be in that, like that residual basically, right? So if we look at the segmentation paper, if we look at, whatever, it has to be both the sum of their personal preferential variations and any other factors, which would include HPTF stuff. And so we can know for a fact that it's not immense. But on the flip side, it may well be that people's preferential variations with headphones are actually smaller than we think they are when it's accounting for the HPTF stuff. But that's kind of conjectural, right? But we know that if there is an effect, we have an idea of the upper bound of its magnitude. And we could probably even infer it a little bit more closely by comparing the variation in people's preferences for speakers to the variation in people's preferences for headphones.
Yeah. Well, right. There's so here's
we can't know it exists until we test it directly.
Right. And I know, yeah. I suppose where to me, there's still a gap is in the why of it, right? If it's because people just prefer that or because of HRTF and HPTF effects.
Well, I mean, surely it's both, right? Like we know that with speakers where there cannot possibly be an HPTF effect, there are variable preferences.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, we also do have some meaningful evidence that headphones vary in their interactions with users' ears relative to free field sound sources.
Right. Yeah, totally. So, but I think it becomes difficult on an individual basis to say, this is going to be more preferred or this is going to be less preferred, given that there are these other variables in there, right?
I think we should test that. I mean, like that's the thing. Like we were talking a little bit about this internally. Can I share that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were talking a little bit internally about the idea of basically doing some formal and controlled but fairly small population, maybe 5 or 10 people, listening tests where we've done characterizations of the HRTFs and the on-the-ear HPTFs of the headphones that we use in the test to see how that has, or if that has any impact on preferences in terms of preferred response. So
yeah,
that's something where, from my point of view, we've hammered the theory out pretty clearly. I mean, when I say we, I mean we have reanimated the theory which was hammered out by Hammershoy and Muller in the 90s, but nonetheless. So really the only thing to do from here is to actually put some numbers to it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not aware we were talking about doing that.
Oh yeah, this is once I come back from...
Yes, please.
If I survive Thailand.
If you survive Thailand. Geez,
even if he doesn't survive, Cameron and I are still going to do it.
Yeah.
So don't worry. Even if Andrew, some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice that we're willing to make.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, is there anything else just about this? This is sort of strayed a little bit from your article there, listener. But yeah,
as was expected, of course.
Is there anything else about it that you... I mean, one of the big things that we still need to do with the article is the validation of the KB5000 DFHRTF.
Yes.
Here we go. This guy. Visual aids are helpful.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's something that we're still working on.
Well, right. So the cat is out of the bag on that now, though, at the very least. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's not especially interesting, I guess. Like working with Constantine, aka Oratory 1990, we took a KEMAR to a hemianechoic chamber that had a loudspeaker array and we've got a fairly large number of fairly high-res measurements of the HRTF of the KEMAR with the KB5000 and 5001 pinna in place. We're currently in the middle of crunching the numbers and figuring out a couple little possible artifacts in the data, but in general, we have a slightly novel data set in that respect. All of the other KEMAR data we had up until now was either extremely smoothed, the one that was leaked by sources who are definitely not in this call from Gross, and the or just using the older KB0065/66 pinna, which, based on what we have here, seems to be meaningfully different. Which isn't surprising. I mean, they're not identical, so you wouldn't expect them to have the same response. It actually does raise kind of an interesting question whether KEMARs with the new pinna still comply with the IEC requirements for the head.
That has been the biggest question I had so far after all of this, because yeah, the magnitude of the deviations, especially in the treble, is significant.
It's more than I expected, and it might push us outside the tolerance envelope. That's actually something that I need to work on with Constantine, because we probably should put together, like, if that's the case, we need to tell Gross about that, because they need to know for their marketing.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So,
and to be fair, it couldn't be. This is getting too far into the weeds.
Is it?
I mean, this like, what are we talking about here? We got Graph Guy, and then Graph Guy 2, and then me.
I would call him Graph Guy Jr.
Okay.
I'm happy to be Graph Guy Jr.
Well, okay, so like in layman's terms, like what would you guys say are the key takeaways for this new sort of discovery about the KB5000 with regards to the way that people, including Dr. Olive, use Gross measurement systems?
Oh yeah, we're starting beef with Sean Olive. I had this on my to-do list. No, so I think that's, I mean, to some degree, we're documenting as something that Dr. Olive has already himself documented when he measured via different means, but he measured the blocked canal transfer functions of a bunch of different fixtures, including the KB 510, I think, on the hammer.
5010.
Yeah. Or 5010, yeah. So he has already shown that measures differently than the Olive pinna. Right, well, the wealthy pinna, I guess.
Which is modified.
Which is
0071 or 0065.
0065. Yeah, it has a different angle and it's made of a different material. And he also showed that his modified pinna, which you can't get, which nobody can get as far as I'm aware, matches better with the human results that he got than the Gross one does. So really, he's just rubbing it in. But of course,
that is how it feels, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what Sean knows. Sean knows that Sean knows who he is. He knows that we're all trying to catch up with him.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that he still does he does measurements using the KB5000 and the KB5010 and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the interesting thing there isn't that he's doing measurements with it. I mean, that makes sort of make sense that he would do that, given that those are the standard ears for the fixture that he, like the Gross fixtures, right? But what's interesting is the comparative difference to what's used in the actual Harman work itself.
And that he still does Harman predicted preference.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
off of the KB5000s.
Yeah, right. It's like using an ear that we know now to be quite different for the same statistics. It's like, well, okay. I wanted to get to something that the listener brought up, which is that for Harman it doesn't matter because it's a closed system. But as soon as we start, basically using that closed system on top of what might be outside of that system, that things start to get potentially a bit weird. And
what do you mean when you say closed system?
So, listener, maybe you can better.
I feel like this was a Joel take, not a me take.
Oh, maybe it was a Joel take.
Yeah.
We really need to get Joel on the podcast again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's traveling right now, so he's
Okay.
unavailable
So
as far as
my understanding of it, though, so like my initial worry about this, right, was like, okay, well, we're saying that DF is a comparable starting point to Harman Inram, right?
Yeah.
And this doesn't change that. I was originally erroneously thinking, oh shoot, like now we're looking at this at the DF here, and it's like way more energy for ear gain than what Harman Inram was. But then I realized it doesn't matter because that is a closed system there. They're using their ear. So if we put this
Sean
well, which
isn't
one
using
of their ears?
Like that's the thing. So, and this is sort of an interesting one. The Welty ear has, to our knowledge, not been in the Harman room.
that was the
that's
6.5 and this and
Yeah.
the
It was the 0071.
7.1. Yeah. So and so in that situation, if supposing this KB5000 had been put in there, we would find similar sort of levels of comparability between DF and Harman Inram.
Well, we might. That's the thing. We don't know.
We don't know, but like
Conjecturally, we might.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
something that's really interesting here is what that pretends for, like we know that tilting the ear will have an effect on the HRTF. We don't actually know what the HRTF of a KEMAR or any other head with the Welty pinna is.
Right.
And that's sort of a missing variable in consideration here.
Right.
But here's the thing, right? Like, this is small. Like, ultimately, this is small. Like, the reason that Sean is doing measurements based on a target that used one pinna, that he validated with another pinna, measured with another pinna, is that they're all pretty goddamn similar.
Oh, and the target is smooth to 1/2 anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it would still be different. But I mean, again, how many points is it worth, right? Like the predictive preference model is good to what, like 8 points, 7.5?
I do think that it causes problems for our project though, potentially, given the distance. It's like a 6 dB difference for ear gain. For like around 2.8K.
Okay, it's at one frequency I can definitely imagine.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
but
one frequency is irrelevant.
Well,
or if not irrelevant, it's very small.
Well, I mean, it's what 1.8 or something like that. Like it's not nothing. And the thing I was going to mention.
Are you talking about the difference between Harman in-room flat on the KB?
No.
Whatever pinna.
So the issue is that we're not baking in the Lorho adjustments, for lack of a better description.
Oh,
He
to the
wants
bounds?
talk about lowering the ear gain again.
Yeah.
Listen,
Well, no. Hold on. That's not
we
what I
can
want to
test that.
That's
We
not what I
can
want.
test
That's not what
that.
I'm saying. I'm saying, given that it is in the, it's a filter in the data, right? Presumably,
Maybe.
it should
We
also
don't
be
know
reflected
that.
in the preference bounds. And if it is reflected in the preference bounds, then I agree that we're not talking about major differences that are all that it's not really it's a fairly negligible difference. But without that, it's a pretty significant one, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree largely with the it's not that big a deal thing for most people, most modes of analysis. I will say the main hang
What a
up
fun
I would
and
have.
informative conversation. sorry, Chad.
Yeah, I will say that the biggest potential change this might make to how we think about a measurement result would have to be on the part of people using things like auto EQ.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, auto EQ is kind of a mistake. Well, auto EQ.
I agree.
I mean, look, I think we're all in agreement there, but it's a really popular, ubiquitous.
It
like
is and
project.
it isn't, right? Like Yako's idea there is a good one. At a net, it probably improves the commanding majority of users' sound quality. It's a good thing. It's just that it's not the terminus of where your EQ journey should go.
And it is also I completely agree with that. And it's also
I don't, but we can come back.
You think it should stop there?
No. I'm saying it's not as much a net positive
Oh,
It's not
okay.
as
Your
much
EQ
a net
should
positive.
stop at auto EQ. Listener
No,
2024.
no.
Quote it. Put
No,
it on
okay.
a
No,
picture. Post it to Headphone headquarters.
What I would say is that it's likely enough that because of the way auto EQ works, treble in particular is being adjusted meaningfully outside the bounds of what could be preferable to a lot of people, which
Yes.
could negatively impact the, I guess, idea of if they would prefer a Harman-like result.
Well,
Because if you auto EQ to Harman, if it's not ignoring that 9K, 10K
Well,
dip in the DFH or TF, then you're getting a pretty big 9 to 10K
but what we're
peak.
saying as well
Well,
with
but
this
doesn't
new
Yako
discovery,
already have something in the auto EQ code that forces that area to be like very
It's-
low keyword shelves?
It's a very blunt instrument. He basically smooths the measurement itself very highly at that
Yeah,
point.
that's based.
I mean, I would agree, but it doesn't account for the fact that that measurement is still going to be well off enough the DFH or TF that it's probably going to add a lot more treble than would.
I think basically like we
be there.
shouldn't EQ to Harman above like 2.8K.
Well, no, I mean, I don't
Just
think that's a
stop.
good take, right? Like, I think if you look at the average headphone the average headphone,
Okay,
right?
you're right. It will. I know what you're going to say, and I agree. It will improve things. Totally. But at the same time, okay, it is a
Average
lesser of
headphone
two evils
isn't that
situation.
bad if we're going by Breitbart.
Sorry, what?
Okay, no, you're taking the mean response of all headphones, but the average headphone does not have the mean response.
Well, if we think about like the
average headphone
audiophile
has
headphone.
large peaks and dips.
Right, but like I'm saying to like Andrew's point, if we were to only EQ to say 3K,
Like, have you guys ever
that
tried,
is a pretty good idea.
like perfectly matching Harman apart from the 9K thing?
Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right. It sounds like
it's not good.
it's
but-
something really
okay,
weird.
now hold on. It's not that it's not good. It is good.
Okay, no, it is better
What do
than
you-
many
what do you mean?
alternatives. It is not good.
Okay. Is an HD800 good?
I mean, you know what I'm going to
No.
say.
Yeah, exactly. It is good.
No.
I said no.
Your bar for good is
Yes,
insane.
is different. I agree. That's
Your bar
really
for good is
Yeah.
deranged, and
That-
that's
that's-
the problem.
that's really where that is the nexus
The
of
curse
this,
of an
of this
audiophile.
conversation, right? I agree with that. So now as it relates to this and how this potentially changes things, listeners' position, I believe, is that people have been erroneously EQing. So headphones measured with this, to Harman, and not like even if they're matching Harman perfectly, apart from the 9K dip, they're not getting Harman. Is that your position?
I would say it's a likelihood.
Yeah.
I don't think that's controversial.
Well, I mean, like we already know a lot of factors that are also stacked in there, like the variation of headphones by like unit.
Mhm.
Like this is why Constantine himself says that people shouldn't take it as like a gospel.
I mean, Sean himself says that.
Well,
wait.
yeah.
All the noise you
But I
make on
mean-
that won't convince the corners of the world that do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that we need to like nerd out about with this, or should we get some chat stuff going?
Well, I mean, I think we're still like. So Griffin said you don't think that auto EQ is a net good?
No, I'm
Look,
not saying
that's
it's
a
not a net
spicy
good. I'm not
Okay.
saying it's not a net good. I'm saying the likelihood that it would have led to negative impressions of what is otherwise
Yeah,
uncontroversially good
yeah.
for a significant amount of people is likely.
And it's also the kind of thing that really gives both measurements and EQ a bad reputation among those for whom it does not grok. Then it's suddenly
I
I
think
don't
it's
trust
likely.
the measurements, and I don't EQ you ruins your technicalities when you get into EQ and all this sort of language. The
Yeah, I
inertia
mean,
of that.
Okay, but all of that.
A lot of those
existed
people are
before-
just
like
you
before
you
auto
just
EQ,
you just
and-
dismiss that, right? But like for me it's so annoying because it's like this is especially when we're talking about headphones that can be amazing with just a couple of adjustments, and it's like that is completely dismissed because but it ruins your technicalities, right? Like, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I just think it is the most common mode of EQing. Like, if someone comes into the hobby and learns about EQ, it's either going to be auto EQ or Oratory's presets. Now, Oratory has been generally good about ignoring that 9K feature, but not perfect, because he still often boosts above that region with a shelf filter or something. But he always in his PDFs puts at the bottom adjust band X to preference for X subjective quality, which I think is a really good way to quell some of that worry. But auto EQ doesn't do that. So but after they have a bad experience with either of those two things, it does affect their idea of it affects their opinion of personalization with EQ as a whole, which is
so
not great.
Here's the big question with auto EQ and with all these. What headphones do we assume people have?
HD6XX.
Bayer Dynamic DT770.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, I think that your assumption is like one tier too good. 2 tiers in the HD6XX. Like, the 6XX is a really decent headphone. Like, the average person who's using auto EQ is using like an MDR V6 or like a fucking Tascam or a what is the one? It's the cheapo open backs that people recommend.
The Superlux?
Yes, Superluxes. Thank you.
Yeah.
The ones that have treble that is a nightmare, right? Yes. Like, all of these,
and on head variation that
DT990.
is ostensibly a nightmare.
Okay, but even setting that aside, for the majority of these, just pulling, I mean, the 770 is an example too. Just pulling down the 770's treble will be almost universally positively received.
But even the 770 is a good example where if you have a 770 with 6 months old pads or a year old pads versus brand new ones, the level is gonna be different.
Well, yes, I know it's not perfect. I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm saying that in general, for the marginal person who's picking this up who has no capacity or willingness to EQ themselves, this is going to be an improvement. The problem is that some people are picking up, like, HD800s or fucking Focal Utopias or Clears or whatever, and then they're like, oh, this slightly impacted the timbre of certain aspects of the treble. Well, yeah, of course. The fucking snooty details, projecting that for an EQ is so hard. There's a reason that doesn't even factor in the Harman work, right?
Yeah, but so what you're saying though is that, like, getting it to good enough is orders of magnitude better than nothing at all. And in that respect, I kind of agree. I think that that's true. But it's basically like how much do we weigh that against the potential outcomes of negative outcomes where the process is treated as somehow something that it's not, right? Doing something that it's not, because they're too lazy to actually figure it out properly. And the
thing is, those people are morons, and you should ignore them. Like, it's as simple as that.
Okay. But then, why do we have EQ, like these types of really basic EQs, for those people to begin with, right? If we should just ignore those people.
You misunderstand who I'm talking about. So if you're a guy who comes in and is like, I have Headphone X and I want to make it sound better, and you go to Oratory, you go to Auto EQ, on average it's going to sound better. If you're a guy who says, I've just bought this $5,000 headphone and I adore the sound, but I want to try this Harman target thing, and then it's like, oh, that didn't make it perfectly utopian when I applied this stock EQ that I got.
No. Oftentimes they think it makes it worse.
And it may well, right? Like, but that's stupid. Like, the auto EQ is not, particularly for people who already like it. Mm-hmm. Auto EQ, particularly in the treble, but in general, is not necessarily going to be well indicated for you. But it's also not for that. It's not for making a headphone that you already immensely enjoy and find special linearly better. It's for making headphones that generally suck, because headphones generally suck generally less. And in general, if you have a headphone that you don't like, the odds are that auto EQ is going to make it sound better.
So I have two questions for you, kind of on that front. One is how many people using auto EQ do we assume are using it correctly versus the people who are slapping it on and calling it a day and then proclaiming with confidence that they're hearing the Harman target or whatever.
Well, but I mean, the thing is, the Harman target is a probability space. Like, there is no line of the Harman target because of the HPT.
We know that. I'm just saying, like, that's separate to, like...
No, but I mean, like, saying you hear that is like saying you hear God. Like, you can't really address that except to explain why that just means you're schizophrenic.
Okay, but to the other point, like, how many people, like, do we think that most people using auto EQ will use it, let's say, correctly? And the other related one to this is, so there's the auto EQ tool, there's obviously Oratory's profiles, but then CrinGraph also has an EQ tool, and I wanted to get your sense of which one of these has the best sort of guide rails for new people to not use it incorrectly.
I mean, I think that a new person struggles to use auto EQ incorrectly because a new person is probably coming in with a terrible headphone. Like, assuming we mean actually new, someone who literally just found out about high-end headphones and got their first headphone.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be something like an M50X or something, or God help me, something like an HD, or not an HD, a DT990 or something. For those people, I don't think that taking it verbatim is wrong. I think that what's the only wrong way to use auto EQ is for something it's never advertised for, which is to treat it as a make headphones perfect button. Right? Like, nobody who makes these things is claiming that they improve all headphones or make all headphones perfect. Like, Yako isn't, Konstantin isn't.
You're correct. They're not advertising it like that.
But people treat this as being...
is that
it's the same thing that
widely that is what happens. It is like some linear improvement.
It's exactly the same thing that's happened with the Harman target and like many on ASR, right? It's like they treat it in ways that it was never intended to be treated.
Well, I mean, I don't even know about that one. Like, I've seen plenty of quite good discourse about the Harman target on ASR, and some of the worst that I've seen was people who are like, you can't quantify goodness of sound, which is hilarious. Sorry, that was very snide of me. No, actually, that guy deserves it. Anyway.
As if he's watching this.
Yeah. No, you never know. I mean, you shouldn't. Well, anyway. So, but no, I mean, I think that the problem is just that people read something into things that isn't there, and then they get mad when what they read in is not the case.
Yep.
So it's like, the problem here is really not even with how the average user uses it. It's with this unadvertised, nobody is saying this exists, premise that it is just a make headphone betterifier.
Yeah.
And that it should always be what you prefer, which you don't hear Yako saying, you don't hear Konstantin saying, you don't hear Sean saying. Like, Sean isn't like, you enjoyed the Foucault Utopia? Don't you know that it only scores like a 75 on my predicted preference score? You ever heard Sean say that?
No, I haven't.
Actually, I've seen him put together some spicy stuff on Twitter.
Okay, yeah, but he's spicy about headphones that are dog shit. And there are headphones that are dog shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there are headphones that sound incredibly bad. And if someone says, I really enjoy... What's one that's been discontinued for so long that I won't offend anybody? The Obravo HAMT, the one that didn't even have a crossover and had a giant cancellation dip in the mids. If someone says they enjoy that, then they're delusional.
Okay, this gets to a related topic, and I maybe we can go there, but how much sort of how much do we take people's reports at face value with this stuff? So, for example, when people say, oh, you're wrong about X headphone, it's amazing. Do we take that to mean this person genuinely prefers whatever this headphone is? Or do we take it to mean that this person it is, let's say there's a skill issue involved, or like a lack of experience with other things, or whatever.
Are you saying that they like something about it, but they're not attributing it correctly?
So okay, oh, go ahead, Blaine.
Well, what I was going to say is I think there's actually multiple nested questions here.
Totally, and I don't think you can take it all like in the same. Like they're not always going to be the same thing going on, right? But for example, if you go to a can jam, right, there will be things that you will hear where you'll go like, this is meaningfully wrong in a number of places, like not just preference related. Like there are things that about this that are just like very wrong, and then someone will be like, oh my god, did you hear that thing? It was amazing. Now, how much of that is them genuinely liking it, or how much? Yeah, or exactly. Right? How much of it is like they just don't know what good is? And it's a weird question, but yeah, I think about that sometimes.
They like something about it.
Several questions together, right? Yeah. Like one is, are people accurate in their report of I enjoyed X more than Y, right? Because some people are probably wrong or coping or lying or whatever, right? And that's
human fallibility, confirmation bias, all that stuff, right?
Now, the next one is the report I enjoyed X more than Y something that you can extrapolate into I will enjoy that with other things, right? Like there are select pieces of music that headphones that have very strange FRs can make not natural or real, but sound really interesting, right? Like occasionally you just happen to have something where it coincides in a kaleidoscopic but interesting way.
That abyss thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't necessarily infer from, your test songs or even just from a few minutes at Can Jam whether you're going to like it in general. And then, because it's not all the sound, there's the question of, if you were just comparing the sound of this headphones X and Y, so like in a virtual listening test, without the physical presence, without the experience of putting them on, all that stuff, would you still prefer it? Whatever. Right?
Yeah.
So, and those are all sort of different. Those have different answers, right? Like, do we really doubt that people are accurate when they say, I liked X better than Y? I think generally we can trust them on that. Yeah. But then there's the question of, was it the sound?
Yeah.
What was in the sound going to carry over to other stuff?
Yeah. Like at the very least, we can probably say, like, in that moment, with all of the various different things that were involved in that person's experience, including the look of it and whatever else, right? The price point, they enjoyed it more. But we can't say necessarily that this would remain if it were controlled.
Yeah, I mean, and what are you controlling for, right? Like, because if you control for, well, I mean, here's the thing, right? If you gave a bunch of listeners a bunch of headphones that were measured in the segmentation paper, right?
Right.
Well, actually, they were measured for the other paper, but whatever. Their preference scores, their real preference scores, would be different from the listening test preference scores, because the listening test preference scores were based on the simulated headphones.
Yes.
And they were based on the simulated headphones because what Sean cared about was sound quality. But the thing is, what end users care about is experiential quality, which is the sum of sound and looks and feel and build and the mythos. And yes, well, not just psychoacoustics. The physical experience of headphones matters. It's why I refuse to wear any focal.
What? Is it just too big for the pinna overall, or is it the?
No, I just find them too heavy.
And they're clampy, right? Like for
they're heavy. They're heavy and they're clampy, and I just don't enjoy it. Like they're nicely put together, but the experience for me of wearing them is not.
They don't need to be as heavy as they are.
I agree.
Oh God, it's so upsetting to me.
Yeah, like their mobile assembly is so light. Like they really could be, and there's like no damping. It's a very open kind of thing.
I swear to God that they are rated just to give a sense of quality, but it's...
Oh, I would not be surprised at all.
Well, actually, I find the clear quite comfortable. I just don't find the other ones. Like the closed backs are too clampy, and then the Utopia is too heavy.
I think they're all too... I think the clear
is reasonably... I need to weigh in...
I mean, bear in mind, from my point of view, no dynamic should weigh more than the HD800. Like the HD800...
cuts off like most...
Well, yeah, I know, because most headphones are bad.
Yeah.
We've established this.
Yeah. Tend to agree. There was another topic that I wanted to get to, and it's totally slipped my mind. Do you guys have any topics? Otherwise, we could dive into the chat. Oh yes, okay, I remember what it was. Sorry.
Oh well.
But
Do you guys have
go
any
first,
topics? No. You go ahead.
All right. So the technicalities question.
Never mind. I regret it. I'm gonna go ahead and
Okay. Here's you guys. I sort of assume that you guys both think of the technicalities question similarly to the way that I do, right? And you guys both saw that post that I put up.
Oh my God, Blaine! Stop.
Jesus. But what I noticed, okay, so after I wrote that big post on Reddit about like, you know, like we need to stop treating this stuff as like, you know, descriptions of acoustic properties, and like recognize that we're talking about here is the effect subjectively, right, of the experience and all that stuff, which is a totally normal thing for people to care about, but like that's what that is. After I wrote that, I got so many people reaching out to me being like, wait, I thought the measurements just described tonality. And I went, oh, fuck. There's so much work to do. And Blaine's going to implode here.
It's just like, man.
Now, I blame Kryn completely for this, right? Because this is, well, it's not technically, he's not the one who started it. Tyle Hertzen's, that's where that term, I believe, originates from.
Well, I mean, technicalities is just one term among many, which has, I mean, like in the 90s, you had Pratt, which I still love to bring up as the
it's so
who
good.
believes in pace rhythm and timing now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So in your opinion, this is just a fad, and it's gonna.
I mean, people want to have something outside FR, right? Like that's obvious, and maybe
which is fine.
There are.
Go ahead.
Maybe it's because there are such things, right? Like, let's assume for the sake of argument, it makes sense that they describe a color in one word impossible. Oh yeah, how about red? Owned chat.
Wrecked.
Sorry, but no. So
vibrant.
If there is
another
word. If there is a word, or there is a thing that people perceive that is, you know, it makes sense they want a word for it. But the problem is that we have no, like, if it exists, we have very little evidence of it. We know that when things that could possibly contribute to it are controlled for, we can explain a very large share of preference in audio. Mm-hmm. So we know it must be fairly small, and it being fairly small means that it's fairly hard to pin down in tests. And there's no way of knowing if there is an interdependency, right? Like, there probably is if it is a real effect. But what is it? We don't know. So it's like, by its construction, it's an unknown, or it's like an, at best, a known unknown. And it's one that I feel like even giving it reality is kind of edgy. Because, no, see, like,
I have a solution to this.
Uh-huh.
We just all have to become Minongians, which is to say, I think we've talked about this before.
I gotta find my box cutter. We're getting into philosophy now.
No, which is to say that we could talk about you know, the frequency response and like the measurements. These are things that exist, right? Acoustic performance in, you know, all the ways that we can measure.
Can I fight with chat now?
What's that?
Can I fight with chat now?
Yes. So, all the things that are all the acoustic things, the physical things that are measurable exist, right? But then technicalities is something that subsists, right? It exists in our minds, and because it exists in our minds, it subsists. So we can have that. It's like it's basically cheating dualism. No, that's a joke. Yeah. If you were to, like, gun to your head or box cutter to your head, to place technicalities somewhere, where would you place it?
Where are my options?
For the box cutter or for technicalities?
The technicalities, Andrew.
No, you anywhere.
Like in the
No, no, no,
head
no.
versus something physically occurring,
Obviously,
or?
it's in the head, right? But like I'm saying,
Yes.
like if you're to say, okay, given, I mean, I'm assuming here all some version of an externalist, right? Like we believe that there are real physical things that contribute to these, representational content in our minds.
Sure.
If you were to attach them to real physical acoustic phenomena, what would you attach them to?
The pattern
apart
and
from
speed
frequency
of the
response.
driver's oscillation. Oh, wait, never mind.
Like,
I mean, like all of them?
no,
Like all
just
of
any
them?
of them, any of them.
Oh,
So like, the reason I bring this up is there was recently somebody who was kind of, conjecturing the idea that maybe dynamics is this is like some sort of like kinetic energy type thing that people are feeling rather than hearing, and then it contributes to the experience in that way, which is an interesting one.
So-
Another
so
one that I had in
Sorry,
my
go
mind was something to do with acoustic impedance. That I mean, the problem with all of this is that, like, because we don't know what the FR at the eardrum is, we can't eliminate that as the end result cause.
So
But-
what I was going to say is a lot of the things you're mentioning, I feel like would affect FR anyway.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, that's one of the real challenges, is that like people see, I guess the people who have an issue seeing, the subjective stuff as something that is rooted in a real mechanical property FR, is that they feel like the FR is the like cause instead of the result of the acoustic properties, if that makes sense. Like it almost feels like people see like if it were to be something like the ratio of stiffness to compliance of the air volume or
Sure.
acoustic impedance or something like that,
I will point
they
out
assume that would be something.
Stiffness and compliance are just the opposite.
Right.
description of it. It's just resistance versus conductance.
Right, but we've
Right.
in the past talked about how, like, well, when we were developing a planar driver, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I was gonna say like drivers. That's a
whatever ended up with the FR
Right.
result on paper was one thing, but like, subjectively there may have been like a particular ratio that was more preferred, right? And in my mind, and maybe this is what you're getting at, listener, but like the way people treat this stuff is, okay, well, there's the FR on paper is one thing, and then there's the like driver story on another,
Yes,
and they
yeah.
contribute to completely different things. And when people like us come along and say, well, it's frequency response at the eardrum is what's responsible for your experience here, and maybe some psychoacoustic stuff, that diminishes the driver story without thinking, wait, it's the driver story that is contributive to the FR at the eardrum.
yes.
Yeah, that's to me, like, just because we're talking about the stuff in terms of FR does not diminish the
That acoustic differences exist.
well, and the way that FR result is achieved, right? Like, or other parameters like low distortion, for example, right? For things where we're saying this is good in these various different ways. So like, to me, it's like, it's not that driver story doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. It's just that the driver story isn't the thing that is separate from what we're sort of measuring here.
Right. And I think that's
presumably
what we all kind of are saying, is that whatever acoustic or electroacoustic or acousto-mechanical thing that's happening is not separate from either the measured result or the subjective experience. It is all one thing, one blob that has real world stuff, but also brain stuff going on.
Okay, let's do chat now.
Let's do chat now. All right, Blaine, cuffs off.
What
No,
do we
I've
got?
already been.
Oh, have
So-
you? Oh, I haven't seen.
Yes. So Bang's Audio Review says, you cannot condemn a brand because you don't like how they feel, guys. This most headphones are bad comment isn't particularly helpful either. We don't need negative energy or elitism in this hobby. So
How about cynicism?
he also did say we don't need cynicism.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So in subsequent commentary. So in general, if I'm going to summarize his complaint here, it's that he finds that audio is excessively difficult to get people into. I think that's pretty universally agreeable. And that he thinks that negativity is antithetical to improving that, which I don't agree with. So, although in some respects I do. I mean, obviously, I'm not just saying be as negative as possible. Although
like
that would be a fun thing to do.
Like I would actually agree with that take in the sense that there are a lot of communities that are particularly negative because this hobby has a tendency to bring out the authoritarian nature of people, to pontificate.
Which is one of my favorite aspects of it.
but that turns
such a Blaine's.
It turns people away, right? Like I would agree with that. Like people get dickish about this, and it creates these fiefdoms, and it turns people away. In that sense, I agree.
Well,
maybe it also
to creating like
it does, like
for the people who do it, right?
Yeah,
like the more that you can, the more that you can stir up people against those guys over there. Which I'm not saying that we occasionally do as well.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Obviously, there's a direct social and financial benefit for anyone who's got money in it because it builds loyalty, right? And loyalty is money.
Listen, those guys over there are wrong. They're wrong about the headphones that they talk about, and they're wrong about their measurements, and they're wrong about not liking whatever.
And by those guys, I mean the guy you don't like, you personally, the viewer, whoever that is.
And we don't even from whichever community.
Exactly.
So
we dislike whoever your out group is.
Yeah. Anyway, which actually it does make it really challenging to piggyback off this point, but it does make it really challenging to create what our bosses have wanted to create with the headphone community. Like they
Utopia?
were like, well, the whole idea was like, okay, the problem that exists in this space is you have, you got your SBAFers, you got your ASRs, you got your headfires, and they all fight each other and hate each other and whatever other, I don't know, silos. What if we just like said, okay, like here's a place where as long as you're not a dick, you can participate. And it's made it very challenging to do that because in many respects, people want that more sort of like, paternalistic kind of approach to community, which is I don't know, like maybe we need to start doing that. But yeah, it does make it challenging.
I mean, it's so, and this is not the official line of anyone here. This is just my personal take, just addressing Bang's audio reviews. My view is that really there are far fewer subgroups of us than we think. Like the commanding majority of audiophiles, frankly, we have the objective data that they like roughly similar things. They have preferential variations, but they do like generally similar things. And where they are often differentiated in their preferences is in the things that gives the reason for different brands to exist. They have different use cases. They like different aesthetics. They like different ergonomics. And yes, they like different sound profiles. But I think that a lot of this premise that there's those bad guys over there with the bad ideology, and I know this is a hobby horse for me with the whole objective subjective thing, but is really just something that serves as a shield for primarily manufacturers who make not very good products. Like, I mean, like, at the end of the day, there's a lot of products that we have both objective and subjective data on people just generally not really benefiting by. And I think that largely they're the folks who I am antagonistic to. Like, and I mean, it's not even by bad intent in a lot of cases. A lot of people just don't know better. But the problem is they're still taking consumers' money, which is still a problem. So really I think the unifying principle for all of us is we want to have people have a good time, right? And in general, that doesn't mean, and you'll very seldom see me say, oh, you have headphone X, that headphone sucks. In general, my framing is, what do you like about it? Here's maybe something you might consider as an alternative.
Yes,
right?
But you do end up running into problems where suddenly people will start, pontificating about how this $1,000 cable made a difference. And if you don't, repudiate that, Like if you don't basically like deal with that, it
Well, because then that spreads, and
yeah,
people overwhelmingly are not going to have that same experience,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like that sort of thing. When I mean when something's bad, and it's also why I wouldn't call folk hall headphones bad, except for me. They are bad for me. But I mean, I recommend them on the reg, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a bit glib about them because, I mean, partially from the inside, we know that people like folk hall headphones a lot, right? Like we have the customer feedback to some extent. I know what the return rate is. Um, Actually, do you know the return rate, Andrew?
I used to. I've stopped paying
Yeah.
attention to that.
Yeah. So we have like some perspective on that specific case that differs from, for example, I know a lot less about ZMF in that respect, but
Yeah.
or just anyone else we don't carry. But so no, but I think that in general, what we all want is for people to have a good experience on average. But the problem is that occasionally that does mean having to say that, yeah, the thing that you like probably is not going to be beneficial to anyone else but you. And also you might benefit from something else.
You know,
Ideally
which is an
not
awkward thing to frame.
unprompted.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
Which is what happens a lot, and I think a lot of what Bang is talking about, Bang's audio reviews is talking about, is
Yeah, just
that a lot of the
suddenly showing up
negativity
being
around
like-
products is unprompted and just someone jumping on someone for owning a product, which
And I think a lot of people sort of take it on and be like, I'm saving the world from this
yes,
misinformation.
it is absolutely a savior complex thing.
Which
and
is
like
just dick
if they're not asking for advice, you maybe shouldn't do that because they are having a good time.
but it makes for
But
good clickbait.
I think all three of us.
He's
That's
right.
true.
No, I've changed
That's
my
true,
mind.
yeah.
We should get it.
But I think
You've-
what connects a lot of us who have been around a while is that we don't really have any antipathy towards fellow enthusiasts who are having a good time, but the manufacturers are very frustrating.
most
Yeah.
people
Because
I've met
things could be
IRL that are
better,
into
a
the
lot
hobby
better.
are even sketchier than Blaine.
Sorry, what was
What
that?
the hell does that mean?
Say that again.
Hartu says most people I've met IRL that are into the hobby are even sketchier than Blaine, so it would be nice to get normal people interested as well.
Even sketchier.
Thanks.
Well, sketchier in
Thanks.
what way?
Well, that's a good question. In what way are they sketchier?
Doesn't have multiple heads in somewhere around their living space.
Yeah.
I am not chaotic evil. I am neutral evil at worst.
I don't know about that, Blaine.
No, you are lawful neutral.
I was gonna say chaotic neutral,
No, lawful.
Nobody
lawful
can
neutral.
agree on my alignment.
which means it's chaotic.
Okay, what's listeners' alignment?
Chaotic neutral. Maybe
Really?
chaotic.
Only because of 2014 Beat.
Well, no, that pushes listener
I'll
towards
smack you.
chaotic evil.
Yeah.
I hate you both.
But like, how are we defining good versus evil and lawful versus chaotic?
Well, okay, no, we're not going to get into ethics. We get into enough stupid philosophy crap. We're not going to get into meta ethics.
Speaking
Although
of which,
universal prescriptivism is the only correct position.
Okay, so you say we're not going to get into ethics, and then you push us into ethics.
Just general consequentialism.
Oh, consequence.
Smash
All right, well,
that
hold
button.
on. Are you a realist or a non-realist?
Okay, we really
Guys.
need to get
Stop.
I'm showing off this for people who don't realize this has. Okay, the problem with this mug. Okay, it has many of my favorite philosophers on it, but it also has people who are just like terrible on it.
Okay, who were you pointing to when you said terrible?
Well, I'm. Let's see. This is Derrida on it. Heidegger,
I mean-
Kierkegaard. I
Wait,
like.
you don't like
Kierkegaard,
Heidegger?
Guys,
Not really.
guys.
This has crazy people on it, dude. It's got Leibniz on it. I do quite like Leibniz.
I think that the best of all possible worlds is one of my favorite interpretations.
Nietzsche's on here. Husserl's on here. Oh my god.
Do you just hate every continental? Like,
I hate most continentals, but I do read it because I find it interesting. Like I've read so much of Sartre.
I just love listener dying.
I've read. I have his The Imaginary on my desk over there. It's very difficult to read, but that's also kind of why I enjoy reading it. But I would never take any of that at face value. other Continentals who and this I treat Kierkegaard the same way. Like I read it, but it's more just because it's fun, you know.
I thought this was audio talk.
I have quite a disdain for
Thank you,
continental
Spencer.
continental philosophy. It doesn't belong in the same place on the shelf as analytic philosophy.
Andrew, stop.
And if you ever read Timothy Williamson, you will agree with me.
Okay, no more.
It's my favorite bait.
We're gonna go back to audio now.
All right, so back to audio. Who's got a topic for us now? Actually, no. I want to ask, because I already said my piece. What do you two think is what really makes this hobby hard to get into? Because we all agree that it's hard to get into, and I've said my thing, which is basically I think that there's a conspiracy, but I mean not really a conspiracy.
So when you say when this hobby is hard to get into, do you mean like nice headphones and audio gear, or do you mean like the communities themselves?
That's a good question. Let's take both separately.
I thought you meant the communities when you said that.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of meant both together. I think both together have a common cause, but
there are those people who, to their benefit, will dip in and dip out, right? Like what's the good shit? Someone will tell them what the good shit is, and then they'll get that, and then they'll leave, and then and be better. They'll have a good time. No, I'm just kidding. But
I mean, no, that seems accurate.
No, but
seems
okay,
like there.
My take on this is quite a bit more friendly, which is sort of counter to my general disposition. That I actually do think there's a lot of fun to be had in these communities. What the issue that I see though quite regularly is that oftentimes these places become sort of like support groups for product owners, and you know, like it's like a like okay, it's like if you go to and I apologize in advance for bring this back to philosophy, but like if you ever see like non-academic philosophy groups outside of academia, stay the fuck away from those. Because those are support groups for people who like the sound of their own voice. It's terrible. And there's a lot of that, I think, going on in these audio forums as well, where it's like people like they just like to sort of express for their, whatever their experience is, in a way that is meant to come across as universally true. And then it sort of creates this, I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like a cyclical effect where and I'm pointing the finger more substantially at places like Headphone here, but it turns into, in my view, is a support group for product owners.
Sure.
And
isn't that basically just another way of saying a copium den?
Yeah, it's a copium den. That's the fucking best way of describing it.
I don't know if either of you two have seen it, but there's a server which I'm gonna leave the
validation station, says Phil.
Okay, but like actually they just opened a channel called Purchase Validation, and it's actually sorry,
sarcastically.
No, that is the purpose of the channel, is to go in, say, hey, I just bought this, and then the whole point is everyone just gives reasons why it was a good idea. And I know it's like kind of the opposite of what we're talking about in terms of like actually helping people out. But I gotta say there's something refreshing about it.
Or just the honesty. They're just like, you know what? I'm gonna call
well, no, the lying. It's lying.
Oh, no, but like if you're calling it the purchase validation, like it's just like unafraid to,
Okay, so I get it, right? Like, and I know that there are people who really angst continuously over what they choose particularly for expensive purchases of durable goods. And I get that, right? And I can kind of see how, but I mean, I'm not licensed to give you recommendations for psychiatric care, but I feel like maybe anti-anxiety treatment might be more useful than that.
Oh God, here we go.
Yeah, that's at you. But no, I'm serious. If you need that channel, that's sort of that feels pathological in a way. Like I can see people getting a benefit from it, but the people who would get a benefit from it, I think, need serious help.
Jesus. I mean, so a lot of the way people in our niche communities think about spaces like Reddit or Headfi or ASR is as that already. So like what you're really saying is just that audiophilia as a whole is whatever you said, in need
Well,
of something.
I defined audiophilia as audio personality disorder on Twitter, so
Yeah, but no, I don't
Yeah,
know.
so
I tend to have a more like optimistic view of this stuff, I guess. Not which is not in keeping with the persona here, but like I feel that like there, like for all of the sort of like cynicism that may come out from what you hear from us here, if this weren't my job, I probably would still be in it to a certain degree, because I enjoy the conversations, I enjoy the discussions, not all of them. In fact, I regularly hate many of them, but like there are ones that are extremely useful and valuable and fun to have, even if it's just people joking around in various different Discord communities. Like, I don't know, it's not a bad place to be if you find the right places, if the right sort of sub niches.
okay, but those are all basically gated communities.
Yes.
Like that's sort of that's the big thing that I think. Like it's weird to me when people are like, is audio hard to get into? Because from forums to Discord, audio basically is segregated into a public access and then like backroom communities. I mean, that's explicit on some forums, it's implicit on others. But
so
isn't that basically us all tacitly saying this is a bad experience for the person coming in, right?
Well, okay,
like if we're not wanting to experience it.
So just on that note, to attach the products to this as well, though, I don't think it's actually as much of a difficult thing to get into as we might make it seem. I think there are certain corners of it that become particularly challenging to break through into, right? But I'm just thinking of maybe this is like erroneously, but like I'm thinking of like people who watch Bad Seed Tech's videos, right? They like if he's talking about like an audio product, for example, like a wired headphone. There's a very good chance that they can buy that product and end up having a great experience, and it's part of like just the general tech interest that they might have, and maybe they don't feel the need to get into some of these more niche of niche corners that have these sort of gated communities, right? And they're able to actually like there is no real barrier there for these people. I think like
there's
idea,
cost, but that's
but there's cost, but like the idea of like
and
acquiring
something that isn't horrible.
But
right.
So
yes.
Someone mentioned in chat that Consumer Report.
Yeah, no,
I'm gonna say it. Consumer Report. All of their recommended headphones are Grados.
But that's
like
that's the problem with Consumer Reports in general. Consumer Reports is
common Consumer Reports L.
It's the same thing. Like people will use it for like cars and stuff. Like I don't know what else people use it for, but like cars is a pretty common one because they talk about like the failures for like various different years and whatnot, right? But if you look at like the base rate of people who are submitting like various different like feedback, it's overwhelmingly for one brand or another. So it's like the people, the Venn diagram overlap of people who participate in Consumer Reports and people who own X or Y brand is quite high, and I think we see that with headphones too. So I imagine it'd be different if you pulled from a larger segment of the population.
Maybe. But yeah, I think Blaine rather succinctly crystallized what I was thinking when I said it's hard to get into audio. It's just that like you can get your foot in the door into any one of these public communities and like do what might be best, which is just ask what's good, get it, and then dip. and then you are technically like into audio because you have an audio product, you enjoy it.
But that's
That
not
is
hard.
really
That's
right.
not hard.
That's
Yeah.
not hard. That's not hard at all, unless it's out of your means or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you buy a bad thing.
Which
But yeah, like
nobody
getting
needs to buy things out of their means. That's the other thing. Like there's good stuff at
I mean,
you know,
audio itself is kind of a luxury hobby.
Yeah.
Like no one needs premium headphones.
Yeah. All right. I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
What is your favorite headphone that measures poorly?
Define
Oh,
poorly.
that's a good question.
So like
Define
headphones
poorly.
measures
headphones
conventionally poorly.
headphones that are out of bounds for or have peaks or whatever. Like and you can't say the HD800 plane.
I mean, my
Why
favorite.
can't I? I'm wearing it.
But like let's say we would look at a measurement and all three of us would be like, yeah, that doesn't measure great. But like it's
I
one of
don't
those things
even
where you're like,
know
I like
what
it anyway.
headphone.
I
I don't
mean,
even know
it's-
if any of us like a headphone that all three of us would agree measures bad.
That's the thing. So like, I would probably be the main
Headphone or
outlier
IEM
there.
as well. Like we
Oh,
could include IEMs.
No, yeah, I don't
Um,
really like many. I mean, I don't like many over-ear headphones either. But
like
I mean, my answer for over-ear headphones is the Auroras Australis.
Oh, yeah, that's
Rather simply.
did not like that
Which
one. But to be
Yeah,
fair, I
I
only
mean-
heard it at a meetup, so I didn't actually get it in.
I also think. Oh no, you heard one after you heard the prototype, I think.
Yes.
Which was a retail unit. But the reason is it is one of like 5 headphones. No, there's less. Probably like 3 headphones that on my head doesn't have a massive peak around like 10, 11, 12K.
Mhm.
And interestingly,
treblets,
those
coping.
3 headphones that I have decent experiences with in this region show the same behavior relative to the KB5000X DF HRTF. Like most headphones show an elevation relative to that.
Mhm.
But the Auroras Australis, Borealis, and MM500 by AutoZ do not.
I really did not like the 5K peak on the Borealis.
That did not bother me as much. But I think that would be a headphone we all agree measures reasonably well.
Yeah, it's not super out of bounds. I wouldn't say
Yeah,
it's
the
great.
Australis
depending on
would
what
be
head
the
you measure it on.
controversial one.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, I haven't heard any of them. I think for me, it would probably be like, in general, Audio Technica's Air and Art series. I haven't heard the new ones, but the AD900, 700, and A900X all have very, shall we say, not target compliant treble, and they all pretty much have quite severely not target compliant bass.
Mhm.
And I've still found them fairly enjoyable in the past for acoustic music. In general, it's one of those things that sort of reaffirms the mids are kind of everything. But, I don't know. It's hard for me to come up with something. I guess maybe like I found the Rode NTH100 with the damper pads removed to be tolerable. Not great, but tolerable.
I would say that one doesn't measure super weird though, without
Yeah.
the damper pads.
Yeah, I'm just sort of like, I don't know. Like the HD800 is my standout
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
that I really enjoy on EQ that most people that is outside of bounds roughly, or at
Yeah.
least it's pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
What
And
about you?
You should feel shame. What about me? I mean, there's a sense in which the Utopia, has peaks that I don't hear. You know, I wouldn't say it's meaningfully out of bounds though.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Oh, the
I mean,
famous badly measuring headphone Focal Utopia.
No, but like people talk about like the peaks in the treble, right? Like that's
Yeah, I hear those.
yeah, I don't. That's the
Yeah.
interesting thing. What else that's sort of like because like the thing I'm looking for more is like something where it's like this is a unique esoteric kind of character that I kind of am into, you know. How would you guys land on the 64 Audio U12T?
Never heard it.
don't like it.
But would you say that it's warm with U shape, right?
It's sneaky warm.
Sneaky warm.
It, yeah, it's warm because of the 3K dip, not because
Yeah.
of the rest of
yeah,
the
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
response.
FR looks pretty bad to me. If I enjoyed that, I would say that would be an example of it.
Yeah.
I would be somewhat surprised to enjoy
Yep.
it.
So for me, it's U12T then. I like that one.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
and sorry, what listener? What was yours? Was the Australis?
For over here, yeah.
Yeah.
For IEMs, I don't think I've found one that measures really weird. That
Oh, for
I
me,
really
that's the Kiwi Ears
Orchestra Light.
Orchestra Light. Upon further listen, though, like it does sound kind of honky in a couple of places, but like overall, it was a lot more tolerable for me. But that's because
Wonder why.
Well, I know why.
Was it the treble being reasonable?
Yeah. I mean, it had the dip in the area where I need the dip. So.
Got it.
Okay. Other
By
questions?
the way, one missed tragic opportunity from this is that I almost baited Super Review into staying in chat to argue, but failed. So my apologies for that.
Yeah, you got interrupted, but I wanted to see that.
What was it about?
Oh, Constantine's in chat.
Wait, Constantine's in chat?
Yeah, his name is
Where?
just Aura. So
Wait, it is?
yeah,
Why is his name just Aura?
I don't know.
Constantine, why is your name Aura?
Oh, he says
Short
Meze
for
Empyrean.
oratory.
Wait, was it Empyrean or the Elite? I thought he liked the Elite. I don't.
See that? I can see the Empyrean being like.
Yeah, I remember
too
him saying
warm
that
for
like
most people or too V for most people, but
I
if you
I
got
can't
the
remember
right head,
if
chill.
it was the Elite or the regular Empyrean, but I remember him saying that he like it measured poorly, but he really liked it. But that's one where
I
like
know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say the overall like balance. I could definitely see people liking, but like I kind of agree with Kryn on that one, where it's like it is subjectively not better than things that are like significantly less expensive. So I just
Yeah, I would say. I mean, as far as I know, Oratory's taste, he does tend to prefer a little bit less, like 1.5 2K relative to something like Harman, and the Empyrean's mids are like tilted downward like that.
What's weird to me about it though is that like he liked it's the Elite, yeah, Scott, yeah, he liked the Elite. What's weird to me about it is that he likes the Elite, but then also likes the Austrian Audio Composer, and those are very different for their presentation.
Yeah.
And so it could be, I assume it's for different reasons, right? But like,
I mean,
one would
with his
think
EQ on the Composer, it's not that different.
I mean, I don't know if this is with or without EQ though.
To be clear, not the PDF EQ, but he sent me his EQ recently, and it makes it look kind of like
for his personal EQ.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, interesting. Now,
It makes it look like what?
It makes it look kind of like an Empyrean. It looks like it has the Veilify treble.
So here's the the thing about that. I think that would probably work better. Like I would imagine the Empyrean would work better than the Composer for Feuerschwanz. So if you're scoring for Feuerschwanz, you know, it makes a certain amount of sense that you would want something, you know, with less ear gain, for example.
Oh, Feuerschwanz isn't that bad.
Well, stuff like
it's metal,
Feuerschwanz.
right?
What's that?
It's metal, right?
Yeah,
It is.
Now, who's to say that people don't want their metal to sound like, you know, screechy and harsh? You know,
I mean, metal is my most listened to genre.
Yeah, exactly. So we're all good metalheads here. So I just happen to prefer it with a little bit less ear gain, because otherwise things get too, you know, glaring and bitey. It's sort of like you know, dark mode versus bright mode, and I prefer dark mode in all things.
JAAW Audio brings up the KEMAR Phoenix call, which I don't think is on either of your two radars because it's an IEM, so Blaine's going to ignore it. And I don't know if you pay much attention to KEMAR, Andrew. It is very weird. It has a 1.5K like hump that pretty much dominates the whole response. But I heard it, and I kind of understand why people like it, even if it sounds weird
Oh, I've
as
seen the
heck.
measurements.
Yeah, it's not good, but it is.
If I liked
interesting.
that would be a very bad measuring headphone that I liked.
Yeah.
Although there is a circularity problem here where we generally define measurements based on, like, measured good as based on our expectations of how it will be perceived. So
Yes. Yeah, like it would be the reason why we wouldn't all agree on something that measures well sounding poorly is
Well,
because of that.
Yeah, but I think it's an interesting question just because, like, if we sort of recalibrate our sense of like enjoyment to instead of being like, this is how I want things to sound all the time, to this isn't how I want things to sound, but it's cool, you know, like, or there's something about it where it's like a quirk that you notice is a quirk, but you're like, I don't, you know, like that's not an issue for me. And an example would be the Modhouse tungstens, which by the way, the measures totally fine. I'm not saying that measures poorly at all, but like the lower, mid, upper bass emphasis that it has was one where I would have expected it to not sound as good as it did for me for the mids, and it actually imparted a really unique character to the mids that I found myself sort of sinking into and enjoying. Right.
Sounds
Slade's
lovely.
trying to start drama again.
All right.
Let me see.
Measures great, but
Measures
sounds
great.
bad.
Oh, I mean that's easy.
DCA expanse and, well, I'm not gonna say the stealth, but like because the stealth was better than the expanse, but the expanse is probably the top one for me there.
Potentially hot
experience-
take.
Oh, sorry.
Any closed back headphone measured on the flat plate ear and cheek sims, including an anthropometric pin.
Yeah, because of the bass.
Yeah. So, in case anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, what the rig Andrew uses for measuring headphones, the Gross 43AG, it is a flat plate with an ear on it, and it potentially could overestimate the seal that a normal person would get on their head.
Well, the plate itself
wear
overestimates the
glasses
seal.
or have hair.
Right. And part of the reason, well, the reason, as far as I'm aware, they made a second pinna in the Harman research was to address that because the original pinna was too stiff. It was causing too much leak.
Yeah.
Something I see a lot is people judging the Bayer DT770, the Audio-Technica M50X, even the AKG K371 as being, you know, Harman compliant for the most part, and therefore a reasonably safe recommendation, without acknowledging this caveat, either because they don't know or, you know, they just believe the graph.
If you want a really vintage example of this, the AKG K550 is actually the reason, to my knowledge, that they did that experiment, or one of the reasons. Because the K550 measures very bassy, but on real heads, almost invariably, it sounds very thin because the bass rolls from like 200 hertz without a seal.
Yep.
The K371 example, though, is in that video that I did about I can't remember which video it was, but there was one where basically I showed the coupling variation, and doing it was like, even when there's a seal break, the bass didn't drop out entirely. It was just meaningfully different from what it was when there was, you know. So the question is, like, without any of your microphones, how is this measuring on people, or how's this performing on people? Because you can't always know that, right?
Right. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, looking at a single measured result and saying this measures good but sounds bad, there might be a lot of
but
cases.
that doesn't. But right. But so that's I think that's cheating, because it's like it doesn't measure the way that it is purported to measure, right? Like, so it doesn't measure for.
I mean, I think in terms of most people's ideas, it does.
DCAs?
Yeah, actually, that's a good
really
point.
of anything.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in that spirit, probably the actually, honestly, back in the day, the K550 was a good example. I put a pair on and I was like, holy shit, I am not accounting for leakage enough.
But what about headphones where, so say, for example, you measured it with an in-ear microphone and you found that it did correspond with the
You're asking for a body of headphones that I don't like. I have measured some headphones that are near microphones, and the ones that I've measured, I was just like, "Huh, that looks really good, but it sounds awful."
Right.
So, I
Yeah.
mean,
So I,
like,
I think there's still two things going on though. There are two things to this question. Where one is headphones that don't measure for me the way that they measure on a graph, like not just a little different, but like meaningfully different. And that's what you're alluding to here. But the other would be headphones, say even open back headphones, for example, where they measure, let's say good, but you don't like them. Is there one
this is
that would
just
come
the
to mind?
circularity problem again. We define measuring good based on what sounds good to us.
Well, hot take: the headphone I'm wearing now, Sennheiser HD650.
Doesn't
Yeah,
I
sound
you don't.
good.
acknowledge it's a very good headphone for most people. Even I can enjoy it and use it
Does
and
it
all
have too
that
much
stuff.
treble for you?
It has the 10K, 12K peak. I'm telling you, like all headphones have this peak on my
HD650
head.
has too much treble.
Just
Listener
wear it for a
2024.
while.
Okay, but look at
2024 DB target.
Look at HD 650 DF calibrated against our preference bounds. The treble is above 4 or 5 kilohertz, pretty much all in the upper end of the bounds.
Yeah.
Which means even if it's not too bright for someone, it could be heard. In this case, by Mr. 5128, who we have a well characterized head contribution of, as a somewhat bright leaning headphone.
But I'm trying to
Now,
think of things that would be like I mean
Hey, Cameron. Cameron's in chat.
yeah. In the
Cam?
inverse example though, I was thinking of things where like we know them to be to perform weirdly performant even on our own heads, right? Like such that it's not that our own heads are making them magically measure good. Oh, we lost Blaine.
Oh, did we?
Oh, he's back. He got
I
fed
just-
up with that question. He's like, no.
No more.
Right. But you get what I mean about that difference, right? Like there are things where we could enjoy them even though we know that there's something weird about them. And there are also things where, well, I actually don't know if the inverse exists. I'm trying to think of it for myself and I can't. Something where like it measures good, but I don't like it measures good, like let's say even in situ, right? And
How many headphones have you measured in situ?
well, I mean, I'm cutting it off at 400 hertz, right? So I'm not analyzing this above.
Oh my god, listener is actually posting the FR of the 650 to the Discord group DM we're in to be like, no, it's bright.
Actually, it's bright, guys.
It's not.
It is for me. A little bit. In one spot. Otherwise, it is, like, warm.
Mm-hmm. So Golden Sound says 1266 is beyond wonky, and I love it. And that's an example of the inverse. But I don't know if the one that we're talking about now exists for me. Like something that I know to be objectively good, even and this is where the DCA ones get weird, right? Where it's like, I know that on my head it doesn't measure the way that it measures on, Mr. Gross over there. So Mr. Gross liked it, but Mr. Resolve here did not. And I can't think of anything where it would be like to me that almost doesn't make sense in the inverse. Because presumably,
Asks, have we tested the expanse in situ? No, we have not.
oh, I measured that with the
At
microphone.
high frequency,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is the problem.
It is the problem. Yeah, yeah. But like
So-
I was getting a seal, So at the very least, that part is the same. But you can
Scott
even
Pleasure makes a very good point. He just put on the HD 650 and it's 65 degrees Fahrenheit, so it is neither cold nor warm.
Destroying my whole argument. Jesus.
Yeah, but
All right, Scott, you
aren't
win.
those terms part of the sound wheel? The one that Dr. Olive referenced on Twitter, and that Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner also made a video about the wheel of terms.
Is that like the Wheel of Fortune?
No, like you must be aware of this. The wheel of I have no other way of describing this of audio descriptions.
So,
And
so tell me, Andrew, have other people seen this wheel?
Yes, I'm only saying it because Sean referenced it on Twitter, and
Has anyone
Aaron
in
made a
chat
video.
seen this wheel that Andrew is alluding to?
You guys haven't seen this video from Aaron.
Is this it, Andrew?
Oh,
I just sent it in chat.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. From what? Torben Holm Peterson.
I've read the paper by Peterson, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good wheel.
Yeah.
It's got some good stuff on it.
Yeah. But, you know, there's obviously.
I'm glad I can provide evidence so Blaine doesn't gaslight you into thinking that the wheel doesn't exist.
You've really thrown me off here because I'd already got Chad on board with him being
the other one would be the one that's on Solder Dude's website, that old thing where it's like Boxy's here and like Muddy is here, or no, Muddy is here, Boxy's here, and then different descriptions as you go up.
I really want to give Franz a new measurement system.
I know.
Who's Franz?
Solder Dude.
Nice guy.
Oh, didn't know his name.
Yeah.
Nice guy. Very
nice
smart.
Guy.
Yeah.
Earless flat plate.
Yeah, cringe measuring system. But I like that he measures a lot of stuff.
He measures a lot of stuff. He makes neat little passive filters that you can stick in your headphones. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, I think I bought some.
I also like that he shows step response, which I know Blaine is gonna eye roll. Yep, there it is. There it is. But that's one thing in particular. I think we all agree that like showing FR as FR is generally the way to do it. But step response, I feel like could illuminate the discussion on
all right, here's
certain things.
Okay, so assuming you're not just trolling me,
I'm not.
Why do you like step response over any other impulsive change?
At least in the way that he shows it on his site, where it's like a transient impulse where I don't know which way the camera is looking in the stream, but the left side is treble and then slower frequencies follow. I think it's a rather intuitive display of FR's potential effect on dynamics if calibrated and zoomed properly.
But step response is just impulse response.
Which is just FR. Yes, I'm aware. But
so why not just do impulse response?
Well, okay. Because impulse response is not as like intuitive looking. Like it's purely a visual thing
in the spirit
in how it
of,
relates
like,
to the dynamic envelope.
The things that we're typically saying, like that we regularly talk about when it comes to FR, is that like oftentimes it's the analysis of FR that is missing, right? In the spirit of that, I agree with listener that like if you had different views, that would make the analysis less about tonal balance and more about whatever else you're trying to, whatever FR relationships you're trying to index for. Sure, I'm on board with that. But at the same time, running with those metrics, I can't think of a scenario where the conversation about them has been about that, other than here. Like,
what do you about? So framing it in terms of it's all FR, but here's a different view of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's almost always here is a new measurement.
Thing. Yeah, a separate cool thing that explains everything.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
So
it is a huge problem actually. And
the other thing we have to do, and I'm waiting. I need to send Blaine a camera for this, but we need
supposed to give me a camera in person, but you got the ear simulator stuck to the metal thing, and then we had to go to Home Depot.
Yeah, but it all worked.
Forgot all about that.
It all worked.
I wish you guys had filmed that.
Oh,
I told him we should film
I did.
that.
I filmed some of it, but
you didn't film the part where you didn't know what vice grips were twice.
That's true. Well, because we were in the fucking hardware store, and I'm pointing.
I'm so glad we can bring this to the public's attention.
Yeah, that was a fun day, hey.
I have not drank as many energy drinks as that in a day in my life.
Drowning in Ghost.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna mention something. Oh yeah. So I need to send Blaine a camera for his part of this, but we need to get that video done where I think Blaine's section is at least in part
myths.
about his section is at least in part about demystifying the whole like, but test tones aren't music thing, right?
Yeah,
to show
or test tones aren't a suitable signal to show a
exactly, yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, we're gonna do a bit about that at New York. It looks like as well.
Woo,
Yep.
I like that presentation. It was a good time.
I'm
Is it going to be all
do-
three of you again?
Yeah, I think it's going to be all three of us again. I'm going to redo my visual aids so they're a bit less made during the show.
Well, I mean, in that case, we can just do that and ensure that DMS doesn't put the microphone next to whoever is talking about clams.
Wait, was he talking about clams?
Apparently, like
what?
I got the audio, I got the thing back, and I was like, this is unintelligible. This is completely unintelligible because there's a guy right next to the microphone talking about what he had for dinner.
Based.
So yeah, it's a little bit funny, but yeah, no.
Would have been nice to just get the content.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, it's better this way because it builds demand, People want what they can't have.
Yeah, but it's a really important
So
piece
true.
of it, right? Because that's one of the common criticisms that I see regularly, It's like, oh yeah, measurements they don't tell the whole story because it's not like music, right? Like music is a much more complicated signal. And yeah.
It is an important thing to dispel.
Yes.
And it is dispelled rather thoroughly in Blaine's presentation.
Someone in chat says that he has the answer, but you guys don't like it. You'd be out of business.
Okay, what is that?
I'm interested now. You've got my attention.
Yeah. All right, you've got us
Age is
hooked, Theo.
yours, Theodoric.
Yeah.
Theodoric Paddlefoot. That's a cool name.
Sounds like
in the meantime,
Potter character.
Surav asks, can you explain the subjective expression warmth over the entire frequency range? I thought warmth is elevated, sub-bass, and bass. Okay, I haven't come across warmth over the... Did listener just use those words? Warmth over the entire...
No, I did not.
Okay.
Maybe I did when talking about 650 being warm everywhere except for one spot. But if you saw it,
I think
you would know what I'm
downward
talking about.
sloping.
It's
downward
just a
sloping,
downward
yeah.
slope that is like
Yeah.
to a
Because-
larger degree than perhaps the median preferred result.
Yeah,
let's
because there is a sense in which like elevated bass is not sufficient for category warm. You can have like I can think of all kinds of headphones that have elevated bass but are not warm.
Yeah, or are like warm beneath a certain point,
Yeah.
and then the treble above it
Yeah.
could
Yeah, it's
completely
just
tilt it the other way.
It's a tilt thing. Like, yeah, some of us like it to be tilted significantly more than others do.
Mm-hmm.
Just like some of us
No,
like it
don't-
tilted more than
don't do
others do. No, it's good. We have Captain Warm on one side and we have Captain Bright on the other, and then me in the middle. It's nice.
you just like to be able to portray yourself as a centrist.
That's right. Extreme center.
Disgusting.
I'm still waiting. Okay, so Theodoric Paddlefoot. Okay, letting them go through the Harmon-like thing of hearing things, and then AI makes the thing.
The thing.
A 3D scan of ears.
This is some rest of the fucking owl energy here.
It's a really good way to put it.
3D scan of ears, taking it from Harmon style amount of peeps, so like 200 and something.
Yeah, 200 something.
And then letting them go through the Harmon-like thing of hearing things, and then AI makes the thing.
I would like you to put this on the stream for a moment.
Okay.
For real though.
Okay, I can do this.
Okay, so
Oh wait.
So
hold on.
the idea is, first you get a set of listening tests and a set of 3D scans of human ears, and then you want to. Oh, you need to move your camera.
Yeah.
And
It's
you
too
need to-
zoomed in. He's beansed it.
He is beans it.
There.
No, but there's
He's
text on the
still
bottom
too
we
zoomed
can't
in.
No, I got it.
No, but they can't. Oh my god. Why are you so zoomed in?
I'm not. It's just that's
you
just
are.
how it
I can
opens.
see. No, I can see the
Oh, I am.
plus on your browser.
I am. Yes.
Control minus. There you go.
There we go.
We're teaching Andrew how to operate Google Chrome. Maybe you are older than me.
I mean, I literally am older than you.
This is a fact, Blaine.
I have more boomer takes though.
We know you do.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so guys, I was trying to make it accessible to many brains. So your concept is scan a bunch of ears, listening tests for the people with those ears, and then you just throw that into an AI and hope that it creates a correlation. Like,
I mean, if we're proposing things that are going to make the people doing the tests unhappy because it's expensive and or unrealistic for timing, why don't we like properly measure the HRTFs instead of just taking pictures of the ear?
well, he said 3D scans.
Is that as good as the full HRTF?
Well, no. I mean, it's the question here is use generative AI to create a pinna. I would not use generative AI for that. You'll notice there's
That'd be fun though. Holy crap!
So
Could
there
you
is
imagine?
actually something like that. Who did it? Hold on, I'm gonna find this because this is cool. That is sort of a thing that exists, except that it doesn't.
So he says you want a thing that everyone loves. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that the outcomes of the Harman research are the wrong. They're positioned incorrectly, and it. I'm of the opinion that it should have been done the same, or that the conclusions should have been the same, approached the same way that preference research in other areas is done. Like you don't see one brand of anything at the grocery store, or sorry, one brand. You don't see one flavor.
Joke's on
of
you.
anything.
I shop at Costco.
Yeah, but you don't see one flavor of anything at the grocery store. You see like one brand will have like 3 or 4 different versions of things to satisfy different groups. And we know that from the Harman research, there are clusters, right? There are preference groups, and they design products like that too. If it's something for younger audiences, they'll design it. They'll make it for with the cluster, whatever the base cluster. I can't remember if it's class 2 or 3, but you know what I mean, right? The more base class. So I feel like that's how we should be talking about it, as a community as well, is in terms of those segments.
So someone says what Blaine might be thinking of is generic oral ID. That's not actually what I was thinking about. What I'm thinking about is humanshape.org/ear, which is actually what he's describing. Well, the generative AI thing, not the trying to infer preference from it thing.
Yeah, this is interesting.
It is very cool. You will notice that the shape of the pinna does not actually vary nearly as much as human pinna shapes vary, though. Like, they have actually constrained the variables here.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yep. Which is sensible. Like, for a lot of reasons. It's quite sensible.
I'm very much for 3D printing something based off of generative AI, like a pinna, and then seeing what happens, because that's good content.
We can. That's
Yeah.
we'd have to print a cast and then cast it. Yeah,
Yes.
we could totally do.
That'd be very cool.
Please stop adding things to my plate. Anyway,
For Blaine.
Yeah.
so no, but here's the problem, Theodore. Getting a correlation between preferred response as measured on a fixture and pinna is not enough to actually determine how to make a headphone most people will like. And all that AI is going to be able to do is draw correlations from the data set you feed it. Oh, what was that ear website URL? Human, HUMANSHAPE.org/ear. Very cool site.
Couldn't you though take that result, plug it into our system, to calculate the DFHRTF for it, and then show it against the preference bound?
So again, assuming that DFHRTF based headphone response is correct, which we have good theoretical and empirical grounding for, but we don't have it perfectly. You still need to know how the headphone interacts with the ear, which would mean you'd need a finite element analysis, or at least boundary element modeling, style model of the headphone and the ear. So,
well, my thought on this is like that feels like an awful lot of extra work for not a lot of.
what I'm not clear of is what role the AI has in this. Like, we can already do other statistical analysis. This just seems like adding AI to add AI.
Marketing.
I mean, there is that.
Yeah.
Let's go for 10 more minutes, but then we gotta end it because I need to.
Chat, you have 10 minutes to ask the questions that will make us fight the most.
Yes. That's always the best.
Do not
content.
mention philosophy.
All philosophy is going to be ignored.
Can I interest you in the concept of minimax relative concession?
No.
No,
you cannot.
Damn it.
You cannot.
We truly
I'm trying to
lost.
think of interesting things. So I guess my question to y'all, to you two, is how common do you think it is for manufacturers of headphones, and say, let's narrow it down even further to audiophile, people who have products in audiophile. How common do you think it actually is for them to measure on multiple heads?
Not. I know it's not. You mean like real heads or multiple rigs?
Multiple heads, so rigs included,
And-
but I mean, I doubt
They don't.
they're-
I mean, Odyssey has multiple heads. We know
Odyssey has
that.
multiple heads, but one of them is used for QC.
Sure.
Oh, I don't think we're counting KU100 in that. They
No,
have,
but they have
different head.
they
they have
have
KEMAR and 5128.
That's right, but they used the KEMAR for QC now. Is my
Oh, I thought
understanding.
they
the
still use
KEMAR
the
sounds like an agonizing fixture to use for QC.
Yeah,
given how
no,
hard it is
I'm
to get
pretty
coupling
sure
with
they
it.
use the KU100 for it.
Okay,
Because it's the first head they ever got, and like in Crane's factory tour, that's the
So-
head that they showed in their little
Okay.
ISO.
In
booth the factory.
in whatever conversations I had, they were telling me that they had used. Oh, you know what it is? It's that they had used the ear. They'd swapped out. They were using the 65 pinna, large format pinna, and that's why our measurements were incongruent. I was like, "What's going on? Why is this?" And I found out afterwards that they were using the other ear.
Man, that is such a like baby step above KU100 when they have the resources to like
Yeah.
not do that.
I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, you don't even need pinna for QC
For
measurements.
QC testing,
so.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you see? All right, so there's a question about someone rating the Susvara very poorly.
Right.
I thought the Susvara would be worth at least $200.
At
Does
least,
that count as very poorly?
well, you would rate everything pretty poorly.
I would put it like 500.
So I don't have any issues with him. Like I would never have expected anything less, right? Or anything else really.
The Susvara's treble is not very good.
I fully agree.
I disagree.
But the Edition XS is $500, has the same issues, and I would take the Susvara over it.
Yeah, and same with. I mean, that's the forever problem of the hi-fi man planers is that the treble, especially around 9K, can be a bit rough. But the Susvara is actually not as bad.
It's interesting that it's
bad
9K
everywhere.
Okay. The only issue, and there's unit variation, right? So like,
I've heard the same Susvara as you.
yes. So what I'm saying with that one, the main issue is around 4.5K. That's the main issue.
No, that's just one point in a cacophony of issues between like 2.5 kilohertz and 10 kilohertz.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
I would agree with
objectively,
Blaine,
that's
except I would extend it all the
not-
way out to 20K.
Yeah, but you don't get your opinion doesn't matter because you want everything to be like massively down tilted.
I just want that one peak to go away.
Okay, so in aggregate,
But I could show you the
is
data of it. You know,
the
like
answer is only one of. So the majority of us agree that the Susvara is bad. So apparently not good at making us argue. Try to find something that gets all three of us against each other.
Okay.
But that was the most successful thus far. 'cause
okay,
it
but
did
out
get
of
the two
all
us
the hi-fi
fighting.
man planners, which one's the best?
The least expensive one.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, I would probably just tell people to get like an HE400 SE or a
No. Which
or
one would you take?
just like assuming
the
I
most
paid the same
comfortable
amount
one.
Assuming
for
you
all
paid
of them.
nothing. Like if someone just handed you one.
The most
And
The
then-
comfortable one.
one.
And which one?
Um,
would that be?
I don't know, maybe like an Aria.
Yeah, which
Really?
one's lighter, Aria or Susvara?
You guys are insane. I don't even think it's remotely close.
For ergonomics?
No, for goodness of sound quality, the Aria has some way worse peaks in the treble than the Susvara. It's not.
Oh, are we
Yeah,
not
but I mean,
allowed
like-
to EQ?
Yeah, are we? If we're, are
No,
we
no,
allowed
no,
to
no,
EQ
no,
it or
no EQ, no EQ. Just like here's.
All right. Well, if I had no EQ and I didn't have to pay any money,
Yes,
then I would probably just take, and I can't sell it.
and you can't sell it.
Fuck.
Can you mod it?
Sandara?
You take a Sundara.
I mean, like
This is a
the
terrible take.
the Susvara has better bass, but the Susvara has way worse treble and meaningfully worse mids. So
I would say, okay, we should get to the bottom of the Susvara thing at some point, because
I thought we did.
objectively, no, we didn't. Objectively, it does not measure with the peaks that you're describing. You might hear it that way. I'm not saying you're not, but
All we got to do is measure it on Blaine's head, and then it's objectively measuring. with
That's
those
right.
people.
That's
There we
right. But on the Gross, it does not have those peaks. But no, the issue that I had with his report there is the group delay messiness, which is
Oh my
basically
God.
just the frequency response, like
Well,
unsmooth.
I'm
right?
still
Like,
not even sure that he's not measuring room noise.
well, yeah, because the annoying. Well, no, there's a really annoying trait of group delay, which is that you'll get excess group delay anytime you have frequency, like anytime there's a magnitude contribution which is not matching in phase with what it should for the yeah. But that means if you have an echo, you have group delay. If you have a fan next to it, you have group delay. I mean, here's my question.
But
Why
hold
are
on,
we
he
looking
didn't
at
post.
group
It's not
delay?
excess group delay. It was
No,
group
he's
delay,
just posting.
No,
I
it's
know.
just group delay, which is
and
what
that's
I
the
know,
problem.
which is
we all
even
agree
worse.
that's right.
But I mean, the thing is, even if it was excess group delay, it's still a bit of a pain point because
Yeah.
then at least you've eliminated, oh, well, there's a high QFR feature. Of course, there's group delay.
Mhm.
But then you still have the problem, oh, well, if there's any noise sources, you have a quite... Like,
Right. You also yeah.
the problem with time domain stuff is that SNR is very hard to do quite well with it. And it's just,
Yeah.
what are you getting?
Yeah. But so like the criticism of the headphone
he'll-
was that the group delay is messy, and I was like, but
Yeah.
that,
Well, yeah,
And
that's
he'll,
just-
he'll
yeah,
append he'll
That's just the
append the
same as
graph
saying
with
the
little
FR.
arrows saying
like-
don't EQ this point because apparently group delay is useful for EQ.
oh
and-
my god, yeah.
Well,
so-
excess group delay is.
yeah,
But he's not
middle
posting
phase
it.
group delay
not
is.
posting it. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the trouble. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's... Yeah, it's...
But yeah, the correlation between the headphones that perform messily in group delay and the ones that don't, it is almost always the open headphones having
That
messy
does-
group delay and the closed and IEMs not.
Would
that
you not?
does correlate with having environmental noise sources. I will
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
because there are high QFR features in the Susvara, because modal, right? It has
Yeah.
peaks,
Yeah.
peaks and dips. You would expect.
That's what I'm saying. You,
But if you're reading into that as it is
If
a
you-
non-performant headphone,
right, and
is, I think, the issue.
first, and to be clear, it's not clear that any of that is perceptually relevant, even in FR. So, to basically criticize it for something that is not relevant, I struggle with that. And then also, of course, 114 dB. I mean, who the fuck cares?
Well, no, I mean, 114 dB matters, right? Like there are...
For whom?
Okay.
people who want to listen to a lot of bass, or
If you're going to EQ to the high heavens, sure.
Okay. So, first off, chill.
Deaf people.
Second-
So says Capra.
No, but I mean, okay, this is going to be taken as a dig, but there are people who are hard of hearing.
Yes,
Like there are
that's true.
people who have conductive hearing loss, and there
Yes.
is
Yeah, that
a
doesn't
use
sound like a dig.
case for a high output. Well, I mean, the fact that I'm saying that implicitly, Anyway, but seriously, there are people. I mean, frankly, Amir, given his age, probably has meaningful broadband hearing loss.
Oh, you're
And
just
so
being
it is.
ageist.
Well, no, that's just science. But no, I mean, like anyone who commutes by car, particularly in the older days when in-cabin noise was higher, much less people who work in noisy places, much less anyone who's ever had the misfortune to have any kind of damage to any portion of
Yeah,
their
that
middle or inner ear.
seems like
So
the
no,
best time to be listening to this as far.
well, no, but I mean, like
I'm
no,
just
what I
trolling
mean
you.
is that so no, there is a purpose to headphones that can get very loud, and it's not just extreme EQ. Like
Well,
there
I would say
are
though, like practically speaking, though, for people who don't have hearing loss, right? The reason would be there's two reasons. One is readability of distortion products, and the other is to ensure that your whatever noise floor is not intruding, and then the other would be for EQ purposes.
well, and someone in chat says, what about things that have unusually high dynamic range or stuff that is a raw recording without compression? Yeah, I mean it's okay. So there is a pertinent factor here, which is we are time sensitive to distortion in the sense that short periods of distortion, e.g., those that you get on a very brief, very large transient in an otherwise quiet passage, are less perceptible. That's something you'll see in perceptual distortion metrics. So,
Unless it's high order, right?
well, all else equal, the longer it goes on
Yeah.
and the higher order it is, and thus the less masked, the more audible it is. I mean, that's like
I wish you
the
had been
rule of thumb.
to Vince
The B and K,
Gray's.
yeah. I really wanted to attend Vince's seminar, but I had to man the booth.
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so no, there are recordings that have 30 dB of dynamic range, right? Now, should they? But if they do, and if you're a slightly louder listener, then I mean that's
But I mean, okay.
pertinent.
So, supposing something is tokening 100 let's say 110 dB. Let's be a little bit more.
Always say tokening.
This is the
I
way
never understand what you
This is the way that this is used in philosophy. Suppose something is hitting 110 dB even, right? And I think 110 dB would be reasonable, to care about. If for whatever reason,
but 114 right out.
No. I'm saying what you're saying. If you are listening to something with 30 dB of dynamic range, maybe 110, maybe some of this would be reasonable to care about. Is it not the case though that at those levels, when it occasionally hits that the fundamental is it's going to be much harder to hear any of those distortion products. In this case, we're talking second and third.
Okay,
like
so
there's no scenario where you would actually hear
you're talking
those
about
products.
the masking effects getting stronger as a function of level.
Yes.
Which is true, but again, bear in mind the distortion products are only successive to the masking tone always with a pure sine input. With music, the distortion products are intermodulation products. So where they show up is a bit more of a luck of the draw.
Right.
So not necessarily. I mean, yes, generically louder means you're less likely to hear distortion. That's like a
but we're also talking about situations where it's only louder for a split second.
I mean, again, is this a big consideration? God, no. Is this a valid consideration? I would object to saying it's not. Like that's the thing. People, I think it's unreasonable to say that it's not a useful data point. I think that it would also be unreasonable to disqualify a product for you if you're a normal volume listener based on that.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I have no issue showing it. I have an issue with saying this is terrible because at 114 dB, it hits the excursion limit. Like that seems unreasonable to me.
I think it depends, right? Like if there's an alternative which is in all other respects just as good, then why would you take
no, actually, 100%. I'm with you there. If there's an alternative where all else is equal, then the one that doesn't hit the excursion limit at 114 dB is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's controversial at all. But to disqualify something because it hits the excursion limit at 114 dB.
No, that would be a bit. But all right. I would say Amir does not do that. And I know we're subtweeting Amir a lot, but I wanted to be specific. He has given positive reviews to stuff that has hit that limit before. So
yes, I've seen that. This is where the consistency issue comes in. But
well, hold on, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're
like this is where I'm in agreement that it's ultimately whether or not he likes it, right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
I don't know if other people will recognize it for that, but at the end of the day, that's what it is.
People are going to be people. Like, that's the horrible thing about them.
Yeah.
People talking about brain burn-in.
Oh, that's a good one.
Let's see. Is brain burn-in a good thing? Like the brain getting used to tonality over time and things sounding better to you, even if they maybe aren't?
I mean, this is a conversation that I think came up recently when we released the 64 audio tour video, because
somebody made a mistake of yeah.
No, I don't think he made a mistake. I think he has
his title was wrong. His title was not what the guy was saying. The guy who posted it.
Yeah, so the error was not on the part of the person who said the quote.
No. That the 64 audio guy was right, like 100%. It's like he was basically saying that that when we're evaluating stuff, we have to avoid. It wasn't saying this specifically, but the takeaway that one could get from it is like your best judgment of a product is in the first like 10 seconds of listening to it, because your brain hasn't.
We're more discerning.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Right.
I would as well.
Yeah, and to me, it also is kind of like it's like that whole idea of like, oh, you need to spend like 6 months with it before you have a sense of whether or not it's any good.
Well,
it's like
it depends on what your goals are. Like, if you want to enjoy the product, if you like, if that is your goal,
I do think there are things.
Brain burn-in has a use there.
Yeah, and I do think
if you're evaluating products for other people to like.
I never want to enjoy any product, because then I can't be angry about it on the internet.
So I will say there are things that arise over longer term use of a thing that are worth, it's worth spending more time with something if you can, right? But the idea that like you don't have a good sense of the sound because you just have a brief listening period, or actually people will often use this to disqualify the Harman stuff because they say, oh, people weren't allowed to listen for long enough in those tests. Like it wasn't long enough for them to give a proper assessment of it. It's like, no, they're just not allowing enough time for things to normalize.
So, in conclusion, we see merit to it for end users, but it's clear why it has problems for reviewers.
Yeah, or anyone making music as well. Like a large part of the process when you're making music is taking regular breaks, because if your brain is kind of regularizing everything and you're getting used to it, you are losing perspective versus the random consumer who will just press play and hear what comes out of the speakers.
So we still need a way to measure excursion limits specifically. Yes, you would be looking at, like, you would define that as basically, and it's squishy, right? You have to define a linearity deviation, right? So you say, if I increase the voltage by 1 dB, my output level at these frequencies goes up by less than 1 dB. How much is the threshold for saying this is now formally nonlinear? And you might see some people say, oh, it's 0.1. You might see people say it's 1, and it varies by basically how much distortion you'll tolerate.
Yeah, and Chocomel, I think, published results you took on Reddit of that exact thing.
I still think that, I still think that linearity, like gain linearity, is actually a good proxy here. But, I mean, it has, like, Aaron's way of visualizing it is more elegant than mine was, because Aaron is smarter than I was then. Maybe smarter than I am now.
So what I found interesting about those focales is the excursion limit. It hits like below the audible threshold, right? Like when it hits first. So if you're not listening,
what do you mean by that?
So okay, so if you're listening if you have it playing at 107 dB at 1K, that is basically where those they hit the excursion limit, right? At that volume level.
Yes.
However, where they hit first, so at its lowest volume, where the threshold is actually at, I want to say like 7 to 10 hertz. And
no. So excursion is constant under FS. So, and any result that shows different will be in error in some respect. So excursion is constant under FS, and that means that, and I think the FS of that one is like 30 hertz or something like that. So basically anything below there, it's the same excursion for a given input voltage.
Right. Okay, interesting. Because when I was doing, I did this testing with basically all of them, and they all hit the excursion limit at 1K at 107 dB, like plus or minus a couple. But what I found is that if I was below that and playing tones that were below the audible threshold, I could get it to clip in the bass first. But hold on. So like when listening to music that didn't contain information that was it subsonic?
Infrasonic. Subsonic is speed.
Yeah, infrasonic. It wouldn't cause it to clip. It wouldn't hit the excursion limit. But if I was playing something that had infrasonic content, it would. So to me, it was interesting because it was like if I was listening normally, I wouldn't hit it. But if I was playing some sort of noise where I increased the range below 20 hertz by a significant amount, suddenly the threshold would go down.
So, I mean, okay, so part of that is that, well, all right, there's a lot here. How long do we have to drill into this? As a phenomenon, this is like, the answer here is, if your music doesn't have a lot of low frequency content, then yes, you are not going to clip it because the clipping is a function of excursion, and excursion is a function of wavelength, and wavelength is the inverse of frequency.
Yeah. So
it all kind of comes together. But it's, I mean, like, music in general doesn't have a lot of content below 40 hertz, maybe, but that's not a universal truth. And particularly anything that's using acoustic recordings that aren't high-pass filtered may well have a lot of infrasonic noise, as you note. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, I would call it a flaw of the focals that they have a tendency to bottom out in like reasonable listening volumes. It doesn't affect me because I'm a quiet listener. It doesn't affect the majority of the people who buy them. But I would say that's something that if they changed it, it would be an improvement, and that means that currently it is a flaw.
Well, so. I actually think the other, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily agree in the sense that 107 dB at 1K is something that people have that much to worry about in normal conditions. Because as soon as you start,
that much to worry about it, it's just that it is an imperfection.
Well, totally. But where I think the bigger issue is that the nonlinear impedance of that headphone means that as soon as you start putting it on higher output impedance, you dramatically reduce that threshold. And suddenly you have every reason to worry about it. And actually, in every single case where I've had someone report to me like, hey, these are clipping, there was that explanation, or they were using it with an EFI device with X bass on, which also does the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, in general, and this is just natural, right? Because the peak of impedance is also the peak of excursion. So high output impedance does mean that you're going to get to the rattly stage faster relative to the mids. You said you had to go in 10 minutes, like 20 minutes ago. I do kind of want to address something that Terry said, just because I want to flog my favorite dead horse.
Okay.
Yes, but also it brings us back to what I think the original impetus of the discussion was. So go, Blaine.
We had an original impetus.
What's up?
We had an original impetus?
Talking about, not talking about, simping for diffuse field.
Well, yes and no. So Terry says, speaking of having a point of reference, hot take, there's many audio reviewers who underestimate or completely ignore the importance of keeping real-world perception of acoustic instruments outside the acoustic realm. Do not make an effort in getting accustomed to them, but then they go on confidently judge a sense of realism for recordings through transducers in reviews, and that's misleading and should be treated as a problem. So there's a problem here. A recording is not an acoustic event.
Wait.
Let
me see if I properly understand the grievance, though. The grievance is one that I think is, if I am understanding this correctly, pretty common. It's actually a pretty common critique of people who are anti-measurement, which is to say that I have a really strong reference for X acoustic event. Therefore, when I'm judging headphones to represent whatever acoustic event might be going on, I have that frame of reference, whereas typical sort of like audio influencers do not have that reference. Is that the grievance?
I don't know if it's specific to anti-measurement people.
It's referencing a sense of realism in music without a reference from real instruments.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying, right? But this is a common thing that I see among people. Say, oh, you're judging something, the graph, but the graph doesn't tell me how about this realism, right? Of whether or not the realism is there to match the acoustic event.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're taking it to that realm. Okay. I think they're just talking about how people reference supposedly an event.
Right.
But they reference realism,
but it is a common critique. Right, but it is a common critique that you see where it's like, or not even a critique. It's like a common, it's a common source of the soapbox, I think. Like the.
Sure. I get my soapboxes from Costco.
But you know what I mean, right? Where it's like, yes. I have this frame of reference that is like, whatever, of whatever importance, right? That other people don't have. And we should be using that frame of reference. Anyways, I'll let you continue. I'm seeing 100s flying up.
I think that's for the cat.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
So no, what I was gonna go into there is like, the problem there is that when you're judging the realism of a recording, you are like, this is just the circle of confusion problem, right? A recording is a construction, an artistic construction of a recording engineer. It's the sum of the position of the mic, of any equalization or effects applied, of any mixing choices made. There isn't an original acoustic event here. The only thing that you can get that is equivalent to that would be a spatial mic recording played back through like wave field synthesis, or a binaural recording played back through headphones. But there is no real here to begin with. Like, yes. It is all as real as a movie is a real physical thing in front of you, which is to say it isn't. It's like
these are also stereo headphones too, which is not, or stereo recordings, not binaural.
Yeah, that's why Blaine said it's only.
It is, setting the pipe. It's the picture is not.
And you get mad at me for philosophy.
Oh, come on. The treachery of images
that one's fairly well known. That one's like semi-meme status. But yeah, what Blaine is saying is gone into a little bit in my article. But yes, there is very rarely an acoustic event in a recording that is not the result of manipulation by a person.
Well, and even if it's not just well, I guess it depends on if you define using an omni mic as manipulation, but
placing a mic is manipulation.
Exactly.
Like a recording is manipulation.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one area where
you sound like Twitter right now. Everything is manipulation.
So true.
The one area where I'm not entirely sure we'll agree when it comes to fidelity is because we've flogged that horse to death, right?
And I am happy to continue flogging it until it is blue.
Yeah. The one area where I'm not sure that I'm on board is as it relates to preference versus people's ideas of neutrality or reference or something like that. Because I do think that people, erroneously or not, have in their minds not always, but I think people are able to distinguish between like, oh, I like this and this sounds neutral, particularly in the cases of people like Taryn or the person with the Toyota Tercel with the subwoofer in the back that's blaring out bass. I don't think these people think that that's neutral. I think they think that's just what they like, and maybe they're doing it for reasons that have nothing to do with overall goodness of sound. They're doing it for other kinds of reasons, maybe. But I think you get the idea that like I sort of asked Sean about this, like it would be worth asking people this question, rather than just asking, what do you prefer? And he does. There are qualifiers, subjective indicators in the research as well, where people do describe things as having, I'm paraphrasing, but like an even tonal balance or whatever, right? But I think it would be interesting to also ask them, like find out not just what people prefer, but find out what people think is neutral.
Well, don't we already know that? We have that from the Harman work. People,
I know
the Tool work
it's
as well.
Yeah, it's
what people
congruent.
prefer is what they say is neutral.
Is what they say is neutral. Yes, but I do think it's worth sussing out in the minds of the respondents, and then mapping that onto listener preference as well, and seeing if there was.
I prefer to make sweeping generalizations and alienate people.
Based.
Fair, I guess.
Yeah, but I think, and they could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Terry's perspective here also comes from the fact that they are, as far as I'm aware, a largely classical music consumer. And I don't know if they play
then
as
here's
well.
the thing. Then it's just the hall design.
Yeah, like it does whittle down the amount of variables due to like the way these recordings are generally made a little bit. But there are still like myriad problems.
I think
with this.
I think you guys are also though like overthinking the problem, which
that's rich coming from you.
Got him.
That's true. But
yeah.
No, I mean like a lot of this though, like I get where it comes from, but like because like I have family members that say exactly the same thing. They are concert musicians as well, and when they're judging equipment, they are judging their experience as if it is universal.
I judge my experience based on when they made the recording, if the hi-hat is on the left side or the right side. If it's the left side, it's a good recording. If it's the right side, it's a bad recording.
I hope that's not.
This is the truth. No, this is the only objective way to judge recording quality. That and drummer heights.
So true.
Yeah.
Okay, we should probably sign off because I think Andrew has to do stuff because he's going to leave in like a day.
Yeah. So I have many things still to prepare. I have to pack. I'm leaving for Thailand tomorrow, so I don't know.
If you turn over the keys to the YouTube channel, we will stream in your absence.
This worries me.
Stop. It shouldn't. It'll be a good time.
Maybe if we should get Taryn to stream in my absence.
I would listen. I will drive up there, and Taryn and I will do an in-person.
That would
stream.
be a great stream.
Actually, the stream would be us cleaning up one of the many rooms.
They're in a better state than.
I've seen them recently, Andrew. You can't lie to me.
Well, yeah, the one is still in a particularly horrific state.
There are crates in the main office, Andrew.
Yeah, I think those are still there, actually. Unfortunately,
I feel like eventually you just
the conference room is cleared up. I removed the bits of electrical components and of headphones and things from the from the conference room that were left over. So, anyways, I need to run, and but yeah, thanks to these two gents for joining me today, and thanks to the audience for being the producers as usual. Super asks Andrew joining Tiger Muay Thai in Phuket. Actually, I am going there, weirdly enough, to Tiger Muay Thai specifically. So,
are you
if I survive, if I make it back, I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. But otherwise,
same time tomorrow, right?
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, have a good February, guys.
Later, guys.